this point, I'm good with it.
Mhm.
But I just wanted to get clarification on what you're meaning by this, because I think, if I recall, it said that, um, it was either all commercial, meaning 100%,
Yeah.
or it could be up to, um, you're saying only 40% of the residential, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, yeah, I guess that does make sense. I was thinking about it in the reverse
The
in my
opposite
mind.
way, yeah.
60% commercial space. Okay, yeah, then that's correct.
Okay, thank you. I was like, I know Emily responds to emails really fast, and I went in my sent mail and I was like, it's not there. It's from my personal one.
Oh, yeah, no,
So it
I
blocked
didn't
it.
have it.
No, yeah. So I was like counting down. I was like, please let me get to her in time.
There's not as many people here as I thought there would have been to sign up. So maybe my guesstimate of 9:30 is incorrect.
Oh, no. NCDOT is here to talk.
Yeah.
We have lots of questions. That's impacting,
I was like, why couldn't they just have sent like an email?
well, I sent him an email with a site map and 30 or so questions. And he waited till tonight to come to respond.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us and for being patient. Our pre-meeting lasted a little long, so I wanted to give the board a moment to step away. At this point, we will call this meeting to order, and if you will please join us for a moment of silence. Now, if you'll join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So as everyone is getting comfortable in their seats, if you will please pull out your phones and make sure that those are on vibrate or turned off. Make sure that they're silenced, and everyone up here will do the same. Thank you. At this point in the meeting, we will move to staff questions. Board members, are there any questions for staff this evening? Seeing none, We'll now move into public comments, requests, presentations. Mr. Knipe? There you are. I'm sorry, I was scanning. Come on up. Mr. Knipe is with NCDOT, and he is going to be giving us an update on Highway 73, the Highway 73 project. How are you this evening?
Great, Mayor Bales. Hope y'all are doing well also.
Thank you.
For having us up tonight.
If you wouldn't mind stating your name and address for the record.
Name and address.
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, Brett Knipe, I'm with NCDOT. I could give you my work address, which is 716 West Main Street in Albemarle, North Carolina, but if y'all want to know where I live, it's out in
You're fine with the work address.
Okay, so I think this is let's see if I can get this right. Really quickly, I guess before I get deep into the presentation, I wanted to recognize that I'm not sure if our project manager from our central offices, Brian Key, if he made it down. Sean Epperson is here with me tonight. He's our Division 10 project development engineer and oversees all of the projects that are in design, planning, that phase of our business. So again, thank y'all for having us. I'll give you an update. I'll try to make it quick, but we're talking about a large corridor of projects here. So to get started, we are going to talk about NC 73 in Huntersville. We'll talk, at a high level, and then maybe into some detail about what this project entails and about some of the details of the design, some of the context or concepts and theories behind the designs. A lot about scope, schedule, and budget. I mean, those three things are what controls our business. Each one of those could impact the other, and neither is less important. The median divided roadways and reduced conflict intersection designs that we'll go through. I'll try to explain to the audience and to the council, why NCDOT and other transportation agencies across the country are implementing these types of designs. We'll go into a little bit of detail at certain intersections, and then we'll talk about how this benefits you in a travel time and safety standpoint. But then next steps, where are we going from here? Where are we in our process? So to start with, the projects we'll cover tonight, it's the TIP numbers on the left side, simply just the state project numbers that we refer to. But we're talking about a series of projects that go from Beatties Ford Road all the way out to east of Davis and Concord Road. And that represents over or right at $250 million worth of work that this state investment is making into the Huntersville area. But the reason that's occurring is because the project is in high demand, or the projects are in high demand. There is a ton of traffic out here, a lot of business activity, a lot of folks living in Huntersville. That's why we see this magnitude of work planned for this area. So this is our mission statement. I mean, essentially, our jobs are to deliver and connect people, goods, and services safely, efficiently. That is our core mission here in North Carolina. So to do that, every project that you see on a major corridor these days comes along with it. It's median divided. The reduced conflict intersections that we'll cover tonight, that's also integral and necessary to meet our mission statement. Our project designs reduce conflicts, therefore they enhance safety. We are providing for quick and efficient movements along the primary direction of travel. And the efficient mobility also carries over to the secondary directions of travel, that being the side streets, if you will, because what we're talking about doing is providing projects that actually move cars quickly instead of cars that, as you see in the corridor today, very congested, a lot of delay, things of that nature. So, decades ago, you may remember, and you still drive on them today, a lot of larger, wide footprint highways with a two-way left turn lane. Those projects, you won't see those coming out of North Carolina anymore. They are simply proven to be too dangerous. They're inefficient. And we have moved on, along again with other state agencies across this country, to a more modern design, referred to as reduced conflict intersections. So the median concept's not new. We've been driving on median divided highways for decades. What we're talking about doing is introducing options for folks to redirect their movements. If you want to go left out of a side street, now you have more opportunities to do that with these designs. So why are we doing this? Again, it's safer. That's the number one goal. That is the top priority of NCDOT's mission, is to deliver our projects that provide a safety benefit for all users. There's going to be less wait time along the corridor. It's a delay reduction. You've got a lot of flexibility in programming the traffic signals. You can control the speed. They work well at low-speed corridors. They work well in higher-speed corridors. The businesses that are around this type of roadway can expect to see folks getting to their place of business quicker, leaving their place of business quicker, getting to where you're going quicker. I would argue that that would bring in happier customers because, if you sit in enough signal cycles around any highway, you may, if you're like me, you have to fight back just a little bit of that road rage after a while, but, the working theory here is we're going to get people to their destinations quicker. Also, it does improve pedestrian mobility because there's many more crossing opportunities for pedestrians in the type of corridor that we're talking about. So this diagram shows you the conflict points. We call this reduced conflict intersections because that's what it does. It reduces the conflicts between vehicular movements. You'll see that including U-turns, you've got 32 conflict points at a traditional all-movement intersection where you've got straights, throughs, lefts, rights. At an RCI type intersection, you reduce those down to 14 conflict points. The bigger takeaway is if you look at all the red dots that are in the center of the intersection on the left side of the diagram, those represent crossing type conflicts. Those crossing conflicts are what result in your worst crashes, your most severe crashes, your fatalities. That's statistics will tell us where most of those most dangerous incidents do occur. So you reduce that down to a very significant, down to 2 versus 16. So if you took an existing signalized intersection, statistics tell us if you convert it to an RCI type intersection, you can reduce crashes by 15%, fatal crashes by 22%, and an unsignalized intersection, you convert it to an RCI intersection, you're going to see an even more dramatic safety benefit by 46% crash reduction, 63% injury and fatal crash reduction. So there's less delay, with this type of design. Each side of the roadway can actually operate independently as if it were a one-way street. So your signal timing and your conflict points can run interdependent of direction. This maximizes efficiency. Again, I've already mentioned that it can be effective at any speed. You can take your signal timing and adjust it to set speeds, either to desired speeds, posted speeds. And there's nothing special about the type of signal equipment. It's traditional, conventional signal heads and signal equipment that you would see in any intersection. So, for a while, we've been looking for ways to explain to people, citizen groups and municipalities, what are the benefits? Why can this be a good option for my town? That's maybe what folks want to hear. And because I think sometimes we get pushback, right? There's folks that simply feel like these intersection types won't benefit them. But so there was a study done by UNCW that in 4 parts analyzed the economic impacts of an RCI corridor. I think this occurred at US 74 at Indian Trail. That was reviewed, NC 55 in Holly Springs, and one other, can't remember. If you know. Okay, yeah, near Wilmington itself, which would make sense. We brought that UNC Wilmington did this study, but what this found was mostly there was no effect, right, on business activity. There was at least 2 locations where positive business activity was found. There was some slight negative impact found to an industrial business or center. So surveying the business owners said that a retail type business saw a better benefit, felt that it was more of a benefit to them in the busier later hours of the evening. But then industrial users were less likely to agree that RCIs would make their business easier to reach. So again, just trying to tell the whole full story of what this study revealed. In a residential area, there was mixed results. However, those results did indicate that the RCI concepts would have a potential to support their home values. But folks don't like to wait at U-turns, right? But one good thing about the designs is the U-turn time frame is relatively short, right? These things are designed to operate efficiently, so folks aren't sitting at signals for extended long periods of time or multiple signal cycles. That's sort of where you start to see people getting pushback, and that delay is the negative experience. Again, folks, they don't want to wait an extended period of time to turn left. That's what the study told us. Here's another, a little bit older study. It was just kind of more anecdotal, but you see we've in Texas for a corridor that was completed in 2010, you've got a developing area where this real estate manager noted that they were still leasing, and everybody felt like their businesses were now better off with the super street. We used to call them super streets. Y'all probably have heard that. We've tried to get away from that name because super streets seem to make people think of, I don't know, something large and imposing maybe. So RCIs seem to be the better moniker. In true Texas form, we've got a quote here from the president and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce here, where he says they're pretty doggone pleased with it. And I like the last comment that my wife would go out of her way to go somewhere else. And, to be honest, I kind of had that experience, right? We're out going in, we live in the area, other side of Lake Norman, but if we want to come to Huntersville, we want to go to Mooresville, these very, very busy places, to be honest, we're apprehensive because certain hours of the day, you can't get down 73, you can't get down Highway 150. You can't, if you're in the south side of Charlotte, there's other roadways that are just like this where folks, they're looking for the easiest, the best commute, the best destination. And Brian, thank you for joining us. Sorry, I announced that you would probably be coming, but it's good that you're here. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. Any of that other stuff I've already missed, we won't worry about. Skipped over one. So we covered this diagram, what it would look like from a motor vehicle perspective, but from a bike and pedestrian perspective, you can also see very impressive reduction in conflict points. And anytime, it's a statistic, right? Anytime you reduce the chance of an accident, you're going to reduce the net number of accidents. So it's pretty simple math. Down from 24 to 8 conflict points for bikes and peds. Not to mention, we said earlier, you're going to have more opportunities to cross as a bicyclist or a pedestrian in an RCI corridor. You've got shorter crossing distances. You've got wide medians to refuge in. So all these are elements of design that we strive to achieve as we're planning our projects. They just inherently are easy to implement with an RCI type design. So I'll go into a little bit more detail about the project, starting from the west out to the east on the 5721 project, which blends in with the 5765 project beginning at Beatty's Ford, coming out all the way to I-77. That's actually 2 projects. But the traffic volumes that we're talking about are actually why we're doing what we're doing. What we know today is that if we were to implement a conventionally signalized corridor, that it simply wouldn't work. It would fail. Much like you can see the congestion that's on the segment of the multi-lane section of NC 73, just right there, say, around the Burkdale area, extremely congested. You go there during the peak times and, you're waiting multiple signal cycles. You've got vehicles spilling out in the turn lanes. So if we build a project like that, that's going to be the result. So, we've had to become innovative. We can't keep doing the same thing. We're going to keep getting the same results. So that's what we're talking about here. these traffic volumes, the design simply will not function. And so, as back to our original statement, our mission statement, we're here to deliver good projects, essentially, projects that move people safely and efficiently. So a little bit of history here. These projects have been on the books for a while. We did run into a period of time where our projects were they were funded, they became unfunded due to funding unavailability. We've since brought projects back online, so it's been a while since we've been out to the public. In spring of 2019, we had newsletters that went out, an additional press release that went out to notify nearby residents and commissioners alike of the design selection of one of the preferred alternative at Beatty's Ford. And we can get into that detail here in just a minute. We've been working on right-of-way plans. We've been updating our cost estimates, which, by the way, tell us that our projects are costing a whole lot more than once thought. But of course, that's true within every industry, the vertical construction industry, the price of eggs, right? I mean, everything in life is really, the cost is going up significantly. Utility coordination, that's an extremely important part of what we do. Most folks don't realize that we've got to develop a set of plans. We have to accommodate the existing utilities, make a plan with them, in concert with them, to relocate their utilities. But, they're not always on board with what we're trying to do. They're definitely not always on board with our schedule, but we do our best, and that's where we are right now with these projects. We've passed all that. We're moving into right-of-way. But we'll get in a little bit more of that detail momentarily. So going through some of these intersection designs. So the design at Beatty's Ford and Brown Mill. Commissioner Kidwell and I have had a conversation about this area, got an email about, questions. Hey, can we look at some alternatives here? And we can talk about that. But let's go through what we've got planned right now. And again, this is a concept design. What you're seeing here, this is a concept map. It's not the detailed level plan design that we actually have. It's just easier to look and see. So your through movements would occur on NC 73, just like they would at any intersection. If you're traveling northbound Beatty's Ford, this is what we call a reverse RCI. So normally in what we'll call a normal RCI or a typical RCI, your side street movements to turn left are redirected to a U-turn bulb. But because we've got a very heavy movement northbound Beatty's Ford to westbound 73, we're accommodating that movement. And it works because we can still keep our number of signal cycles reduced by this design. So if you want to go westbound 73 to southbound Gilead, you can make that left turn movement at Brown Mill. So we're taking advantage of the existing roadway that's there, and we're able to separate those movements from the primary intersection, which keeps our efficiency intact. So we've got the reverse RCI and an RCI. I think I may have skipped. Did I skip? No, sorry. Question, yes, go ahead.
Yes, we got several. So Commissioner Phillips, you did have your hand up first.
I was throwing my hands up because she goes, how is your family going to get home? I live on Brown Mill Road. I've been waiting a long time to talk to y'all. So some of the stuff you've said I've found a little bit insulting, and I'm just going to put it out there.
Sure.
Studies are numbers, they're not people. You're talking about large businesses and corporations, but what you're doing just at Brown Mill alone affects at least 7 businesses, and that's not even counting the smaller businesses and the storage units. The old store is owned by my parents. You're killing my parents' business with what you're doing because there's only one way in, one way out for our customers. And it's very frustrating for me, even looking at my neighbors at the horse farm, knowing how huge their trailers are. I know this board for years has sent letters really encouraging you not to do this with Brown Mill Road because you guys aren't going to widen it. And that road right now is pretty much single lane. The accidents that happen on our road is insane. I mean, I'm literally shaking because I'm so upset that people aren't being treated like people. And ultimately, when you guys talk about the traffic and this and that, the traffic on Beatty's Ford and in my area is due to the fact that the 77 toll roads happen instead of general purpose lanes. So you have people who are taking Beatty's Ford to Catawba trying to avoid 77. And it also feels like you guys are more so pandering to the traffic that goes to Lincoln County instead of the traffic in Huntersville and Cornelius. And even these well-established homes and neighborhoods, like Henry Lane's been there forever, and those people are freaking out. And I am a face that's impacted by this. My parents are impacted by this, my neighbors, good people. And I don't think that this concept works for my area because what is going on in my area is not Birkdale. Even though it's just 2 miles apart, it's not the same. And I'm really concerned even for the people who live in Birkdale across from Blythe Landing. They're probably not going to have homes. And that's very unfortunate that people are being disrupted, small businesses, farms are being disrupted for traffic flow. So I just need to get that out there because I've been waiting to say that for a very, very long time.
I understand, and all valid concerns. You know, I don't want to discount your concerns, and I understand where you're coming from. I think, and when you said the widening or not widening Brown Mill, are you talking about on that segment between like what I'll call the east?
My family lives on the left side.
On the left side, okay.
And the amount of accidents that we have, and like there's an elderly family who has had emergency calls here lately. There's a historical cemetery on my road that I'm concerned about because those people have already been moved once when they built Lake Norman. I don't need those people moved again. I mean, this is my this is my home.
So well, maybe we could take maybe a piece of it at a time and try to talk through some of it.
I don't think you can talk through a bad idea. I really don't. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to disrespect you, but
No, I understand. I mean, when you're impacted personally by something, you get passionate about it, right? I mean, I would too.
It's my family. It's my parents. Like, this farm's been around for 100 years. Our store's over 100 years old.
So Brown Mill's there right now,
Yeah.
right? It's an existing road. If you're talking about the western side of Brown Mill, what I was going to show you on the next plan is we had a request to be able to turn left from NC 73 onto Brown Mill, and we were able to facilitate that. So the final plan does show a left end from 73 onto Brown Mill over what's called a leftover. So you will be able to turn left off of 73 onto that leg of Brown Mill. Now, from your perspective, I don't know if that's good or bad, right? Because I hear you that you're concerned about how it's going to impact you. But again, the road is there today, so we're not really proposing to reconfigure the road itself, except for where it connects up to 73. If there's an historic feature along the road, we've got to take that into account.
We've got many.
Right, so, you know, you said two things, though. You're not widening the road, but should we be widening the road? But if you got a historic feature, maybe you don't want to widen it, so there's a balance there. You know, what, do we want to retain the character of the road or widen it? And so I'm not sure.
Just don't make it part of this craziness because I'm looking at it up here and.
On the western side now.
Well, the whole thing, like if you even think the left into Brown Mill, we have our neighbors with the horse farm, them having to do multiple U-turns with these huge trailers with horses that probably cost more than some of our houses. That's a practical thing to be concerned about because we don't want to have the roundabout situation like we've had around Rama Church and you got people stuck every other day.
Just go through.
Yeah, or they cut through. I just think that the human aspect of this entire thing has been taken out. And I feel like Rob and Amber probably have a lot of concerns they want to share. So I think we should just throw it all at you and then we'll see what happens.
Okay, well, we can keep going through it if you want to.
I feel like I'm going to end up cussing and I really don't want to. I've not done that at a board meeting yet.
Hey, look, I get it. I mean, you're passionate about it because it's impacting where you live. It's a personal thing. So, I mean, that's the thing about our projects. You know, we impact people. We impact people where they work and live, where they use the road every single day. It's a big impact. So I understand what you're saying. I can try to get through it all, and we can try to go back, however you guys want to do it, because there's liable to be a lot of questions about a lot of the concepts. I will say, you know, it's the design, what you're seeing. You know, I think what we're changing is the ability to turn left off of 73 onto Beatty's Ford. I think that's what's being altered most significantly, if I'm just kind of high level looking at it. So,
Well, yeah, I mean, you can't take a left right now. I mean, you can, but you can't take a left from Brown Mill onto Beatty's Ford right now because they have the divider up that blocks people from 73.
Right.
And they did that when I was a kid because we had so many accidents.
Right, it's so much traffic volume and there's so many accidents. That's what, that's kind of what this is all about, is to try to make things run smoother and to have less accidents.
I mean, I think the intersection would move much finer if the lights were timed right. Like, that's my little bubble of the world, so I just feel like the human aspect has been taken out of it because I'm concerned about my family, but I'm even more concerned about my neighbors and stuff because this can ruin some very good small businesses.
So let's get to Commissioner Kidwell's question or comment.
So Brett, I sent you a list.
Did.
And a lot of what Commissioner Phillips just spoke to you about is on that list.
Right.
I got made fun of when my first year on the board because I went out and measured a road because I didn't buy what our former public works director was telling me, and I was right. He was off by 2 feet. Still got made fun of. But I did go out and measure Brown Mill Road. It's 12 to 15 feet, varying areas. And as I said in my email, to push traffic through there, and I did bring up the horse, the equestrian farm, and I've seen some of those trailers struggle to get up that incline, and their best way of getting in is coming down Beatty's Ford and then coming up Brown Mill. The other thing, and I just want to point out on this segment that it's kind of crazy, but
You're saying coming down Beatty's Ford?
Coming north.
on Beatty's Ford, they would, if they're coming from Denver, they would rather take a right, go south on Beatty's Ford and turn into Brown Mill. If they're coming north on Beatty's Ford, they would rather turn into Brown Mill here. Yeah. And we're taking that away there. There's a little, they're not gonna be able to make that turn if we move forward.
There are things that we can consider doing differently, particularly at Brown Mill and Beatty's Ford, that could, I'll say it, alter mobility options, right?
Okay.
Go different directions. One thing is for sure is that's going to increase our footprint and increase our impact. So it's always a trade-off, right? Do we want to get wider and impact the businesses or the residents or the historic features? I'm just being
You can be blunt. You're not
just
gonna
trying to
hurt
be
anybody's feelings.
upfront, just trying to be transparent. And so that would be what we'd be thinking through, right? The trade-off, which is still something we can think about.
The other thing I just want to point out is Beatty's Ford crosses over 73 and it goes down by the Brown property and down by the Blythe property, and it hits this body of water that I know you're familiar with. It's called Lake Norman.
Yes, sir.
So why in the heck would we move that road?
So
I mean, you can make a left turn out of that road just as good as you can make a left turn out of a new road. I mean, it seems like we're wasting taxpayer money there.
So the reason you remove movements from an intersection is to reduce the number of signal phases. The amount of every signal phase, a green ball or green arrow, whatever the case, from an intersection, if it's present, it's occupying time on that signal cycle. And so reducing the number of signal cycles is how we achieve the efficiency.
So
What that movement of the road is exaggerated, so the proposal is not to move it quite that much. Again, this is a concept, but it impacts efficiency. Every movement you introduce into an intersection,
Well, I don't think you're impacting efficiency if you keep the road the same. And let's say we keep this intersection like you've got it here, which I disagree with completely. If they're still going to make a right turn into their property, have to make a left turn out, go down a quarter mile, make a U-turn so they can head over to Burkdale for dinner, which they'll probably not do. They'll probably, like you saying, going to Mooresville right now. I don't want to deal with the traffic. I don't want to deal with traffic making a U-turn and then still being in traffic.
the idea there is the overall time saving you're going to get out of such a corridor is going to more than make up for any time you've got to go down the street and make a U-turn. That's the working theory, right? I mean, I've got some data in here that talks about overall corridor travel time savings. So if you can save, a minute and a half from driving from here to Burkdale, it's going to take much less than that minute and a half to go make the U-turn to begin with. And so, but it's a balance, and that benefit is most it's going to be most relevant during the busiest hours of the day. Sure, if there was no traffic out there and this was middle of the night, could you turn left out of your driveway quicker? Absolutely. But back to one of the previous slides, we've been building, this is a 4-lane, this is proposed as a 4-lane divided roadway, meaning it's got a median. So not every side street, not every driveway is gonna be able to turn left because of that median. But what we're proposing is U-turn bulbs all up and down along this corridor that will facilitate those left turns in a synchronized manner to help you get along the corridor quicker. That's the theory behind it all.
And I understand that, and I understand the theories. I mean, and, something you said in an earlier slide, on the 20-year-old study from Texas, you put this through a developing area. 73 is developed. It's all the way to McGuire, it's developed. Now, beyond McGuire, it's starting to develop. We're starting to see storage units heading towards Denver. There's more property being sold over there every day, but this is a developed area. Looking at just this slide in this intersection, I don't want to take up too much time, but. Yeah, Amazon just sells anything. A phone went off up here, that's why I said that. You got the BP right here, you got the grease monkey here, you've got a bunch of storage units here that there's probably 9 little shops within that.
Well, and just for record, this map's not even updated to include the storage units or some of the property changes that have happened.
And
I mean,
again, this is our concept. It's not even been updated since we included the left end. So it's a concept. We didn't redo our concepts because we are in the final design. So.
Yeah, and someone can say, yeah, when they have a developing area, and I got these empty cement pads, and you put a super street concept or RCI, whatever the heck you want to call it. Yeah, and Texas is great. Texas is probably the best state to model after because they build the roads first, and then they worry about what's going to happen later before anybody develops. And this is the opposite of what we're doing here. We already have working farms, and we have businesses, and we have people who've owned property. I mean, Jesus, the Blythes have owned that property since the beginning of North Carolina.
Yep. I mean, and there's no doubt. I mean, our roads, our road projects, collectively, NCDOT's, Town of Huntersville, the citizens of the area, everybody that uses a road, our projects, they have trade-offs. They're going to change landscapes. They're going to impact businesses, positive, negative, or same with residences, and there's no escaping that.
Absolutely, but that's why we needed. I mean, if we had our last public meeting in 2018 or 19, right after that, we said we have no funding for these projects because there was a mishap with money at the state, that somehow NCDOT lost money, the state lost money, COVID happened, whatever. And then here it is, 2023. By the way, we're starting to back up, or into 2022. We're starting to back up, and hey, by the way, we're still going to go with what we said in 2018-19. The town of Huntersville, Cornelius, Denver, the region deserves for NCDOT to reopen those meetings and get the public involved because they need to know how they're going to be impacted.
No doubt.
Yeah, and I don't know if you heard earlier, there's a project that we're doing, and I sent it to you. It's a Gilead Road, Beatty's Ford project that, I'd love, if we're going to move forward with a lot of the stuff to work together with. Before we've even been able to contact the homeowners and the landowners in that area, we got some of these real estate folks, attorneys.
Real estate attorneys.
Real estate attorneys, not the real estate individuals. I do have my realtor's license, so I'm not going to say anything negative about that. However, they're getting these letters, and people along this corridor, they're getting the same letters, and they're like, oh my God, what's going on? And that was why I had emailed you. It was like 37 questions.
Quite a few.
Whole big map, color coded.
Right.
Yeah.
Lots of.
It was as long as this dais.
That was a Sunday afternoon that you emailed it to, so I know you were working hard on it, and it was quite detailed.
And I don't want. I want you to keep going, and I'm sure my fellow commissioners have other questions, but it's.
Well, I'm hoping that we can get to those questions as we go through the presentation. Obviously, we've started a lot of them already, so. We can handle it however you guys want. I could try to get through the presentation, and we can go back.
So let's go ahead and get through the presentation, and then we can circle back. Make sure you're writing your questions down, and then we'll see where you take us.
Okay. And I will say this, before we go any further. we are in a final stage of design. We're out there trying to buy right-of-way for these projects. That doesn't mean that we can't talk about alternatives, okay? So we're definitely open for that, but you got to recognize that that gets into a schedule implication, right? Just wanted to be upfront about it.
Thank you.
Definitely talk through it. Okay, so what we were talking about there, Beatty's Ford to Brown Mill, again, the primary movements that we covered in one of the preliminary slides, that's facilitated. Also, that left's out on Beatty's Ford to westbound 73. That is a primary movement, very, very heavy. I'm sure most of y'all are familiar with that. There are redirected secondary movements, lefts into Brown Mill, then on the Beatty's Ford. Here was that previous design, but you see what we've changed is this left in. Formerly on the first public hearing map didn't include it, but our design map or our design plans do include that left in. So you'd have a right in, right out, left in option on the western leg at Brown Mill. And that was at the town's request. So, we're going to move on to a couple of these. This is West Catawba. What we have on Slater right now is what's called a continuous flow intersection. I will say up front that I'm still looking at this with our project team to see if there's other options, not just because you sent the email, but we would already. I'll take the credit. Well, sure. But Commissioner Kidwell did ask us to convert this to a traditional intersection, I believe, right, with full movement. And, I'll just tell you all up front, since we're all being blunt and transparent, a full movement intersection would alter the landscape even more. You've got to get pretty wide. Not to mention it won't function. It would back traffic up back into the up and downstream intersections, causing those intersections not to function. So that's why we're proposing something innovative, a continuous flow intersection. Again, this is something that we can talk about. We can look at other alternatives. But right now, what we have is this continuous flow. Try to walk you through some of those movements. Following NC 73, pretty simple. From west to east, you can go straight through. Of course, there's a couple signals to navigate. You'll be able to turn, make your left movement by crossing through the two signals, which again are timed. It's a choreographed movement. It's the intent is to move through there seamlessly in coordination with the downstream and upstream signals. So if you throw in a different type of signal, a full movement intersection, you lose that opportunity. The West Catawba movements can go straight through. You want to turn left from West Catawba onto 73, you're going to cut across the first leg of the intersection. But again, you have to progress through these signals, which are optimized for efficiency.
So, never mind, I said to write down my questions, so I'm writing down my questions.
You sure?
Yes, I'm sure.
Okay. So this is similar to the intersection in NC 16 and Mount Holly Huntersville Road. It is not what I would call a full continuous flow intersection. It's basically got one movement that reflects that type of design, and that actually was the first of its kind. The Mount Holly Huntersville and NC 16, the first of its kind in North Carolina. But what it is it has the highest capacity of any at-grade intersection. Your next option is a grade separation or a bridge. So if we want to retain the same level of operational efficiency, we'd have to figure out a way to elevate and go up and over. A traditional full movement intersection, Commissioner Kidwell, like we talked about in that email, wouldn't perform at the same level. So that's why we've landed where we've landed with these designs. But again, these are things we can talk through. And I'll keep going through here so we can see a couple of the other concepts. So Birkdale Commons and Lindholm area, this is more of a traditional RCI. You can see how those movements would work straight through on NC 73. If you want to turn, let me back that one up. So if you're traveling either direction, you want to turn left, you could do so at the left over at the main signal. But if you want to turn from the side street to turn left, you go to the U-turn bulb to make that movement. Again, we're talking about reducing signal phases. We're talking about reducing impact opportunities, reducing crashes, improving operational efficiency. You've got the reverse RCI scenario at Lindholm, where you can turn left out, just like at Beatty's Ford, where that was a primary movement, very heavy movement. It made sense to accommodate that movement here. We were able to do that and retain the operational efficiency in the design. A little bit different at North Cross Drive. This is referred to as a bow tie or a barbell intersection. Essentially, it redirects left turns to the roundabouts that are on the north and the south side of NC 73. There simply wasn't enough space to put U-turn bulbs in along the main line. So you can accomplish the same thing with a U-turn, or in this case, a roundabout, which also serves as a U-turn on the side streets. So your primary movements can remain the same. You're going east-west straight through the intersection. You want to turn right, east and west, you can do that. If you want to go straight through, you could do that from North Cross, north and south, right turns out. The difference is if you want to turn left onto North Cross from either east or westbound NC 73, you go to roundabout, you make a U-turn. Again, the roundabout serves as the same function as a U-turn bulb would, and you're able to travel in your desired direction. So we're moving on to the next project in the corridor. It's I-5718. It's an interchange improvement. It's a split diamond interchange where we are able to pull movements off of the ramps on northbound to that new flyover bridge, if you will. It would cross over I-77 from North Cross to 21, pull that local traffic out of the main intersection. Same thing on the north side. You're able to access US 21 from an alternate location instead of going through the main interchange. That project is, as far as fitting into this corridor, it does just fine. But you can see, again, it's another level of innovation to try to alter how we're approaching it. Because to handle the same amount of traffic at the ramps in a typical situation, your footprint would get wider, and have larger impacts. The next project is the 2632 AB project. This one picks up at 115 because that segment between 21 and 115 had already been approved, thanks to the town for advanced constructing that. We had an innovative design that went into that project there at 21. It's another RCI type design. It's a quadrant roadway. So it displaces left turns. The businesses there have been very successful. We heard lots of complaints and lots of concerns when we were planning and designing that project. Sean Epperson actually had a big hand in that quadrant roadway design, that concept, but it's proven to operate very well. But onto this project, again, it's getting outside, it's heading into Davidson, outside of the Huntersville area. Again, it's a project that we're in final design. We're going to right-of-way this year, hope to be building it within 3 years. It's another project where we had a public meeting several years ago, but it does take time to develop these projects and get through concepts and through that utility coordination into final design. But right now we've reached that point where we've completed that. We're trying to go into construction. This is another reverse RCI type concept where you're able to turn left out of Davison Concord out to eastbound NC 73, again, because that was a primary movement. So it also worked for the reverse on the Prosperity Church Road extension. So you can make your traditional movement straight through and rights off the main line. You could turn lefts off the side streets. But if you wanted to turn left off the main line into the side street, you go to the U-turn bulb, which is signalized, and you're able to reach your final destination. So the travel time analysis that I referenced earlier, I'll give you a summary slide of that in a second, but the takeaway here is the differential columns. So in the morning, to travel through this corridor, you know, you're going to see an improvement of 1 minute and 42 seconds. That travel time is where the benefit comes in. So even if you're only going, you know, just a few blocks, it doesn't take a lot of time to make, a lot of distance to make up the travel time you've got to occupy by going to these U-turn movements. So here's the summary. You're experiencing quite much less delay. That's the intent, right? We're saving time. We're reducing congestion. We're improving air quality. You know, so 1 minute 42 seconds. You know, you multiply that times every vehicle that travels through these corridors every day. You know, in the design year, you know, upwards of 60,000 cars a day, 60,000 vehicles are going to experience 1 minute 42 seconds of improved travel time. There's value in that. So where we are, next steps, we are in that right-of-way acquisition phase. All that's still going on. It takes time to get through that. Again, as we've already discussed, these projects, any road project, it's going to have impacts to the properties. There's going to be a lot of time talking to property owners, negotiating with property owners, right? We're not, you know, we have to take time to go through that. We've got to acquire the right-of-way, then we've got to move all the utilities, and hope to begin by construction in 2026. I will say the interchange project is probably behind on that schedule. I don't think we're going to quite make that. It's not quite as advanced as the other projects.
All right, so now
So with that, now we've got questions.
Commissioners, do you have any questions? Commissioner, yes, Commissioner Kovacs.
So my question from before was if we can go back to Beatty's Ford. So if you are trying to get to one of the businesses on that eastern little island, how do you get to those if you're coming from Burkdale?
So if the eastern island, then you would be able to turn left off of NC 73 onto Brown Mill.
So that is, you can go all the way across.
And we can't see
It's,
you're using the pointer, we can't see.
well, I don't really have a pointer per
So
se.
you can go across.
Okay, so yeah, that shows that you guys don't have, can you see it now on your screens? I don't have the laser pointer. I don't have a mouse. This is a touchpad, but. So right there, yeah, you can make that left movement. So if you're coming from, say, the Burkdale area, you're westbound, you want to turn left on the Brown Mill, that's where you would turn left.
And then if you're coming from the west, you have the ability to turn right into those. Still, correct? Even though there's a bulb right there?
I don't know if they can see it, they have to turn around, but. Okay, so if you're coming the other way.
We can turn.
Okay, sorry, y'all. So your question was if you're coming eastbound
Yes.
and you wanted to get to this area? So you would be able to make this turn here.
And that's gonna, those businesses will survive, according to your research? You said that businesses said their profits increased?
So, you know, that was a, you know, an independent study, not conducted by NCDOT, you know, that validated some of our points. Are there going to be locations where impacts are greater? Most definitely.
So if you live on the left island, how do you get home?
So if you're coming from, you know, this concept was,
Well, actually, if you're coming from Burkdale, how do you?
right, so this was updated. We accommodated this left turn in here. So you're able to turn left here in the final design. I can show you that on the,
I saw, okay.
okay.
Okay, and then if few slides, in like 2 or 3 slides, it showed where it was Catawba and all of that.
What's Catawba?
So to go from Birkdale to Harris Teeter, you have to go down to a turnaround bulb, turn around, and then go back.
There would be a U-turn bulb there that would facilitate that.
Okay. It just seems like we're disrupting a lot of established businesses, and I'm thinking about property owners that if they're trying to sell property, they basically aren't, no one's gonna wanna buy it if people can't access properties anymore.
But you are still able to access the property. Some of the accesses might change, and so you'd have to imagine if this were a conventional design here, the footprint would be much larger. So if this doesn't result in, you know, takings of property, if we do something more conventional, we know for sure that it takes a wider footprint to provide the same level of service or operational benefit of the roadway, so you'd actually have greater impacts.
So let me ask
Most
this
cases.
question in regards to this gas station here.
Okay.
How do I get in? Where are the entry points?
So, do we?
Because
Brian,
I
you
don't
happen to have any
see them here.
Final plans we could look at to show that? Again, because we're talking about a concept here.
That's why I'm asking the question.
Only from down there on Brown Mill.
Now, that's the only plan sheet I've got. I do have my laptop where I could pull them out if we wanted to get to that level of detail, but I apologize, I don't.
That's fine. I think that we have questions really around the businesses through that corridor as well, and understanding how they're going to be able to get in and out of their business or their homes. So I think that's something I think each of the board members are probably going to want to see at some point,
Okay. We can
so that
provide
we
some
can help to communicate what that looks like. So I think that would be helpful, which means I'm not all going to ask my question about how do you get to the cash-ins at West Catawba, because, and Harris Teeter.
Let me say this about this intersection. So if this was conventional intersections, and it is like this today, you know, you've got limited ability to turn right and left out of the driveways, like onto Beatty's Ford or onto 73. So that condition really wouldn't change if you were able to make right in, right out movements. So if you don't at least have that, then you don't have access. But to my point earlier, you have access. You know, especially if it were a conventional intersection, you've got to protect, you know, access to a lot of the left turn lanes that you would have right there. So it's the same type of impacts you're actually talking about. It's just a different way of looking at it.
And, you know, I want to also kind of highlight the fact that in 2018, the last time we really had any conversation around this, the majority of this board wasn't sitting on this board. So a lot of the questions, well, you're probably going to hear the same question from those of us who were here, but then also additional questions from the folks that weren't sitting here before. So they're going to have some of those initial questions as well.
Well, I mean, I'll make a proposal.
Please.
If we could pull like a project team together, have the plans out there, we could go through areas one by one. Maybe we could get some of the questions like we've got tonight and what Commissioner Kidwell submitted prior to, try to have all that, you know, bulleted out and be ready to walk through it, because so much of this is buried in a level of detail that's very difficult to get to in a PowerPoint like this.
I think that would be very helpful to this board, but I don't want to speak for them either. Would you all like to see that? Yes?
Okay.
Yes. Okay, so yes.
We're wanting to go back and, you know, to have some type of public outreach, you know, level of that public outreach hasn't been established yet, but we wanted to do something. So maybe, you know, it might make sense. I mean, we could consider something like a local official session and then you know, a session open to the citizens, or however we wanted to work it, but something that gets this information out to everybody and addresses questions. If you guys want to do yours first and then give a little gap between those two, we can try it that way, but I'm open for suggestions.
Commissioner Kovacs.
I would love to attend something like that, and I'm not trying to discount. I know you guys are pros at what you do. I just am having a hard time wrapping my head around telling our residents that you have to go forward so far past your destination to go backwards to get to your destination, and then we're saying it's like we're bettering the air
If you tell 'em
quality
this
and
before you
time.
tell them that, we're talking about a proposed 4-lane median divided highway. The median is there, right? So most folks that access the corridor don't happen to have, are not at a major intersection. So a conventional corridor of with major intersections, let's say you have traditional intersections where there are full movements. Everybody between those traditional full movement intersections still has to turn right, still has to go to a signal that's not designed to accommodate their U-turn movement and sit in a lot longer line of traffic to get there, so it takes some more time. So if you accept that this is a median divided facility to begin with, those U-turns are present for most of the users that live up and down the roadway, or that actually live there. So that's the whole point. If you take that in first and understand that we're not just saying, hey, everybody has to turn right to turn left. We're saying, you're going to wind up with that case if we could, number one, afford to build a conventional corridor, and then we wanted to impact the additional impacts to the businesses and residents, the physical impacts, because you have to go so much wider to build something conventionally to handle the same traffic flow.
I just don't
It's
want to
kinda
end up
median.
with dead spots around town for places that have already started their businesses or their homes is all.
So let's go ahead and make a plan
Okay.
to do that, to do both sessions, because I think both need to occur. It's been far too long since we've had it.
Okay.
And then we can go from there.
We'll do it.
All right? Thank you so very much. Is there, Commissioner Munger?
We were conferring here, and actually, one of the slides you put up there was, I believe, to save 1 minute and 40 seconds?
42, I think. That was,
From where to where?
so that was a corridor travel time analysis from the beginning of these projects to the end. So I believe, Brian, Sean, y'all check me if I'm wrong, but from Beatty's Ford to where? To North Cross? Okay, so it wasn't even across 77. I didn't think it was, because I thought it was higher if we went that far.
Okay, so just that shorter segment, because I was gonna
Yeah,
say, if
because
you
that's
told me
right, when we were-
77 all the way out past Denver, I'm like, oh my goodness. But one of my
North
questions.
Cross to Beatty's Ford. Yeah.
Okay, so one of the references you made was to Texas, and I've spent a fair amount of time in Texas. One of the things that I always see with Texas roads, and I believe Commissioner Kidwell made this kind of point too, is Texas roads typically you have an elevated road down the middle, and you have entry roads, or what do they call them? Service roads running parallel to that, and it allows the U-turns right under the overpasses. And the other thing, and that I'm getting to the point Kidwell made, was they build the roads first, and then retail and restaurants and commercial and everything comes. So it makes sense because everyone knows what they're dealing with. I've seen this type of road. The one that sticks out in my mind is out on 85, on Highway 73 near Interstate 85. Makes perfect sense there. There's nothing there. Here, I'm curious if you could give us an example of where you're going to implement this or have implemented this, where businesses exist, and where that traffic and that.
It's East West 74 in the Indian Trail has a segment, an RCI segment that was implemented just a few years ago. That's our best local example of an established corridor where this type of treatment is applied.
Okay, I'd love to see that, because that would give me a better idea of how you've implemented where life is already fully thriving and
We can try to provide some level of focus on that when we gather back up, but it's, if you want to just, Google map it or anything, it's Indian Trail, it's in, US 74, heading through that area of Union County.
Yeah, and also a different area of town that I know, well, not of our town, of the region, where I'm curious if you guys are talking about doing the same thing, would be Highway 150 in Mooresville.
Absolutely. And that's Division 12, so I'm not going to speak for them, but it's an RCI corridor. They've got a continuous flow intersection, at least one of them on theirs. And I'll tell you all this, every single major project in the state of North Carolina today is faced with the same challenge. Our traffic volumes that we have today and that our growth rates have led us to these conclusions. And so it's simply a matter of dealing with the traffic. So I will tell y'all this, if we didn't do RCIs, if we did something with conventional intersections, you know, you'd be talking something like an 8-lane roadway with multiple turn lanes at every intersection, which would remove the businesses. It would literally consume them. So, and the cost would be, I mean, it was, what we have on the books today is 200, what was it, 243 million? Almost $250 million. So that's with the current design. So anything larger would just cost that much more. So it becomes an economics choice too, to, you know, choose a roadway design that operates efficiently, takes up less space, costs less money. It has, at the very least, perceived negative impacts by the folks that live around them. So we understand that, and that's important to us too. So we got to find that balance.
Mr. Roberts?
Yeah, just one question, Brett. I'd say, well, I guess the question is, the stage you're in now in this project, and when you're working with Huntersville, is there gonna be minor tweaks, you know, at this stage, you know, you can consider minor tweaks or wholesale changes? And what I mean by that is, and I'm gonna just pick this right here, is there any chance to go to full movement intersections? You've had this question, I'm sure, to you before from a previous board. Or we're talking about the stage we're in now, we're getting ready to buy right away. We could consider tweaks, but not wholesale changes.
Anthony, I mean, I want to be as flexible as we can be. I don't want to leave here telling you guys, heck no, we're not doing anything. And I don't want to say that, you know, we'll do whatever you want. Because, again, it's what I just said. We've got to find a balance. Where we would be stuck, I think, is if we, through our analysis, revealed that a full movement intersection would not provide some minimum level of service. I mean, we're not going to build an 8-lane roadway out here, right? It's not practical. Nobody's going to want that. It's horrible for pedestrians. It's going to be congested in a short order anyway. But if we were to contemplate it, you know, we'd have to prove that we could get a reasonable level of operational efficiency. Going back to that mission statement, we got to deliver projects, you know, that are good for our citizens. They move goods and services. That's the intent. So we would be stuck if we got to a point where you guys wanted a conventional and we said, all right, well, if we build a conventional, it won't work. So we're wasting taxpayer money. That would be an impasse. Maybe then we would look at something like a grade separation. Well, that's going to come at a lot more cost and potentially more impacts. But we're willing to look at it, work with you guys. There will be schedule implications. The more detail we go through, you know, if we're going to stop where we are right now, if that's the request of the town after we meet, then, you know, it will delay the project. But we're willing to hear you guys out because, you know, we really need you at the table. I mean, y'all are the stakeholders.
Commissioner Kidwell? Commissioner Partee didn't have any questions. I was just going down the line.
Okay. I didn't know if you're going to people who haven't spoken yet. Sorry, my mic was off. First thing is we skipped a huge intersection of this 73, our segment, and that's from basically Brown Mill all the way to David Kinney. And part of that is Blythe Landing. And there's a couple bulbs on the map for people to make U-turns to get into Blythe. And as I stated, you know, there are boats. You know, we number one, we do a lot of fishing tournaments out of that area. And people are bringing either, you know, they're 18, 20-foot bass boats. Then we got a lot of recreational boating coming out of there. And those are 24, 32, 34-foot boats. You know, there's some, you know, not everybody has a nice dock on the lake. So some of us, well, not me, but like Commissioner Kovacs, they have to take their boat home. So, yeah, that's something we left out here, and that's something we'll need to definitely discuss as a board.
Those bulbs definitely will accommodate those boat trailers just like they would, you know, a larger vehicle.
And an 18-wheeler.
Absolutely.
All right, because
Well,
the one,
Let me say it this way. Not every single bulb will have to accommodate an 18-wheeler necessarily, because that's context, right?
Right.
But they would be designed to accommodate, you know, the most frequent larger vehicles.
and you don't have it on the map, but I know on the one I looked at, you actually have the bulb going into Blythe. You turn in, and then you have to come back out on the road and then make another right turn into Blythe Landing. So you're turning, coming back into traffic, and then going into the area. there, definitely an area of concern because as you're pulling your $50, $150, $200,000 boat out, someone's coming down the line, hit you. So there's a safety concern there.
Would those be signalized at Bly?
The
Yeah, your right turn lane if I.
We can get these
Yeah.
plans out and get that level of detail.
And then, which brings me into safety and going up to where the Cashins is and the Harris Teeter, there's a small set of homes back there. And right now, they can turn left in coming from 77, or they can turn right in coming from 73, and head home up a main thoroughfare type road through a bunch of businesses. It's definitely speed control. But, I'm concerned that they're gonna start saying, oh, man, I got to do this U-turn, you take a U-turn to get back up here, I'm just gonna cut through the Harris Teeter parking lot. And when they do that, there's families out there walking, getting their groceries, and there's a safety concern there on that. And then the final thing, if you could go back to your mission statement. I know, I'm sorry. Oh, every single slide. Connecting people, products, and places safely. This concept, in my eyes, this is not connecting people. It's certainly, it might be moving people. It might be moving products to get to places, but it's not connecting us. And, I think there's a lot of work that we still need to do and discuss on this. And I know you guys are NCDOT. It's the railroad, NCDOT, and above them is God.
That is not a,
So,
we don't even want to be in
so,
that hierarchy.
you know,
We want to be in that hierarchy.
but, the concern for the municipality, at least in my eyes, and I won't speak from the rest of my commissioners, I'm concerned about not just getting my citizens to and from places safely, but I'm making sure the businesses that they go to, that they work at, that they own, thrive through this.
We want the exact same thing.
Because
Nothing more. We want nothing more than that same outcome.
and I'm glad to hear that, because that is a big deal for us here. Thank you.
Commissioner Kovacs? No? Commissioner Boone? Commissioner Phillips?
I just wanted to ask, when's the last time you guys have actually, physically been out there to, that intersection at, Brown Mill, Beatty's Ford?
I mean, I'm through there personally on a semi-regular basis. I mean, I don't know exactly when, maybe within a couple of months, definitely.
Okay, well, y'all, and I'm not, trying to be funny or anything, but you guys are more than welcome to, come out and, really, view the traffic and the situation and see how close things are to the road and put your feet on the ground, because, we can look at maps all day, but until you actually are out there and see it, I think that makes a big impact. And I think if you guys see, the new storage units and all the businesses in there, that can help you get your footing a little better on the area.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can make that part of our.
And I won't cuss at you if you come out, I promise.
All right, so we will circle back and work with staff to schedule something for the future for this board and then for the public. And we'll all get hopefully on the similar page. Yes.
Coordinate with on that.
I would coordinate with Mr. Roberts, please.
Will do. Thank y'all very
We'll
much.
figure it out. Thank you so much. All right, we are going to move into public comments. And we have two people have signed up to speak under public comments. Everyone else is under another item on the agenda. The first one is Debbie Hendricks. Ms. Hendricks, as you come, if you wouldn't mind stating your name and address for the record and into the microphone, and you have 3 minutes.
Debbie Hendricks, 9900 Lariat Court, Huntersville. I'm here tonight to hopefully get an amendment change for Section 94.46 for us to be able to have a chicken coop closer to where your dwelling place is. Right now, it says it has to be 100 feet away. You have to have, I'm sorry, I don't remember exactly, it was 20 or 25 as far as your property lines. Davidson and Cornelius have 10 feet from a dwelling place, 10 feet from property lines. Let me say it better that way. Anyways, it's a lot easier. I went to Janet, I believe, is the one who suggested I go to the animal control officer and speak with him. So I asked him questions as far as, you know, what kind of difficulties have you found? Do you find a lot of people have a coop and they're messy? You know, what do you notice? Is there anything I need to know about? How can I be, you know, best prepared? And his thing was, he's never seen one that's not sanitary, because everyone who has chickens has them because they want their fresh eggs, okay? So they're gonna make sure it's clean. And when I asked the guy in Cornelius, he said he had never seen it, but he said he did see some homes where they had dogs and they didn't take care of the dogs, but not the chickens. They were always well cared for. So I just don't think 10, 15 feet away from your dwelling place is a bad thing. I asked, McCutcheon, I can't remember his name, here in Huntersville, but anyway, I said, you know, you can come out and look, it's nice, I promise you, but I'm not getting chickens until I get the okay. I don't want to have chickens far away from my dwelling place because I want to make sure I can keep an eye on them. And I'm backed up on Rich Hatchet, which, you know, before they put in the apartments, it was fine. We hardly had any traffic, but that's not how it is now. It's bad. So I would like to have them as close as possible and where the chickens are safe. And I won't have roosters. And my neighbors don't care if we have chickens. I don't know what else you have, any questions or whatever for me, but.
Well, and this is a public, your opportunity to speak. We don't have dialogue.
Okay.
So,
I wasn't sure how it went.
no. So thank you for coming and sharing your concern. And I'm sure the commissioners have taken that down, and we'll circle back at some point.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
The second person who has signed up to speak is Mr. Earl Genois. And sir, as you come, you have 3 minutes, if you'll state your name and address for the record.
Harold Genois, 8537 Camberley Road. Good evening. Councilmen, councilwomen, Madam Mayor, citizens. An appeal to common sense. Reading from information, legalmatch.com, Merriam-Webster Dictionary, Defense Post.
Sir, can you speak into the microphone so that folks can hear you?
I discovered substantial information that supports action to stop inappropriate construction in the greens at Burkdale Village. The, quote, theory of nuisance, end quote, might serve as a basis for further remodeling of the current project in order to protect property and quality of living in the village. Judging the construction plan as a nuisance will supply a requirement for redesigning the construction. It follows that a possible legal threat, quote, threshold for a substantial threat, unquote, to the expectations for normal lives as homeowners and the values of their properties exists. The possible loss of property values as a nuisance to homeowners strengthens the opposition to the present details of the North American Property Plan. Obviously, the current construction plan will continue to replace healthy, fresh air, soil with tons of ticky-tacky, junky structures, and an outdoor village shopping area that once upon a time provided an inviting area of the mall. For example, we received a skating rink without a vote of approval by village residents. No one I know voted for a miniature skating rink as a substantial substitute for our original setting. In addition, the proposal for a huge office building and a parking deck may mask a more general outcome of the plan, that is, to replace our homes with a business center between Samford Road and Robbins Park. Please consider the NAP construction plan as a, quote, nuisance, unquote, with a cause of sizable, quote, not imaginary, end quote, loss of future homeowner property values and vote against rezoning. Already hampered by insufficient auto exits such as roundabouts or traffic lights to Sanford Road and Catawba Avenue, the construction plans for an office building and a parking lot threaten the actual appeal of home ownership in the village. Moreover, the new construction and traffic patterns will create a perfect storm of traffic congestion in the minds of potential home buyers, causing a home selling craze at lower sales prices. As a result, the business center will replace most homes in the village with the approval of rezoning. I appeal to the Huntersville Town Council, Mayor, Planning Board. Well, thank you.
Thank you, sir. No one else has signed up to speak this evening, other than with the public hearings that are upcoming. Are there any agenda changes? Seeing no agenda changes, is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
Motion to adopt the agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Kidwell. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Kovacs. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none. Is there a motion for the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
There is a motion and there is a second. All those in favor? None opposed. We will now move to public hearings. Item 9A. This is to conduct a continuation of public hearing on petition R22-05 Oak Hill Grove Edition. Mr. Pete, how are you this evening?
Just fine, Mayor, thank you.
Good, thank
Board
you.
members, thank you. I'm going to talk about the two items on the agenda somewhat in an overlap fashion, but I will present the essence of both as we go forward. But the first in specific order, and it is important that these are conducted in this order, is R2205, which is a proposed addition to the Oak Grove Hill subdivision. You can see the area in yellow primarily that has the black striping. That represents the current Oak Grove Hill boundaries. This is a single-family subdivision that was approved in 2018, and it goes from Beatties Ford Road, Carver Avenue, Overhill Road, down to Mount Holly, Huntersville Road. Now, the area in the bold red is represented by a bit of the yellow, meaning a bit of the existing, and then there's the area in green that has black striping. Now, this is a combination that is happening. What you're looking at is there is, you can see the call out, 21.37 acres of new land that is being proposed to be rezoned from rural to neighborhood residential conditional district, mimicking all of the requirements of the existing Oak Grove Hill development. The area in yellow that is also within the red is a portion of the existing development that the developer is choosing to redesign. They're reconfiguring the road and some of the lot layout. Again, if incorporated, it would mimic the existing development. So that just gives you a quick snapshot of zoning in the area. You can see that there's some NR as well, and there's some highway commercial, some special purpose, and some neighborhood commercial as well. This is a context map, and the big red circle that you're seeing here, this is different from the one that I just talked about. We do have that area in the red border up along the Green Creek to the upper right. But the red circle represents an activity center from our Huntersville 2040 community plan. And as you know, that is an intensification, that is a mixing of uses that is encouraged where you have the intersection of two thoroughfares, in this case, Mount Holly, Huntersville Road, and Beatties Ford Road. It is slightly off skew to kind of go northern, which is where our property is. Everything south of Mount Holly, Huntersville Road, including all of Mount Holly, Huntersville Road, is in the city of Charlotte. But I wanted to point out to you that there is a portion of the existing Oak Grove Hill beyond the boundaries of the circle, and there's a portion of the proposal that is beyond that circle. And we could certainly come back to that as needed. Here again is a composite of what the two phases will look like when together. You can see that there is a, excuse me just a second. There is this area here that I'd already outlined. That is the reconfigured area. You see the yellow undertone there. This represents the new layout, not the old situation. And on the right, there is a little bit of a lot distinction and street distinction. You can see in the top that it was 4 lots and then 5 lots after you crossed the creek, and it went straight out to Mount Holly Huntersville. The bottom one shows you that it's going to turn inward and go toward 2 new connections to Mount Holly Huntersville in place of the one in the top. And then you can see that the lots are double loaded on the west side of the creek, and then they sort of move out into what would be the new additional property. And again, I understand this is a lot to take in, and we can come back to any of this as we move through the presentation. The coloring of the lots throughout the existing area as well as the new do represent lot types. There is not one single type all throughout. There is a variety, although they are all single family. Here's a quick snapshot letting you know that the new acreage would be 28.26, and that 28 does include the 6 acres that are going from the old into the new. Again, as I mentioned, the zoning currently for this 28 acres is neighborhood residential conditional district, which is from the existing development, and some rural. And the proposal would be all cohesively to create a new section of neighborhood residential, and this is being termed by the applicant as a phase 3. Single-family homes to the tune of about 161. They may reduce that number as they move through, but as you know, through public hearings, you can do less than you're advertising. So that's the number at the moment. The density here you can see under the new area is 1.8, which I'll show you in just a minute on a density map. And then if you add that 1.8 to the existing density, you end up with 2.4 across all 3 phases. And this was probably a good point to just mention to you real quick that the original development from 2018 was not phased. Everything was together. There was no 1, 2, 3 or anything like that. So they have created the existing now as a 1, 2 phase, and this would be a 3rd phase if it's approved. That is just a blow-up of the site plan, again, showing you where the street layouts are. I will point out that this is a new connection to Mount Holly Huntersville, and it is not across from St. Mark's. It is just over, there's a subdivision from Charlotte, and I apologize for not knowing the name of it, but I can find that for the next presentation. But that is the TIA, that analysis. The town did not determine that a TIA was needed for its purposes, primarily because you were dealing with state roads, and all of Mount Holly Huntersville is city of Charlotte. However, DOT and Charlotte DOT both looked at this, and I'll show you those requirements in just a second. But aside from that connection that I just highlighted, I did want to point out too that this area here in the pink area that I highlighted is an existing right-of-way that was never opened. It's called Dewey Puckett Road, I believe, or Lane. And so it is there, and it is not new. It is in the system, and it's just going to be developed by the applicant if there's an approval. From a policy perspective, the 2040 community plan, you can see some of the policies that it is consistent with. These speak to land uses, these speak to environmental preservation in terms of many of the same highlighted areas of the 2040 plan that the original 2018 Oak Grove Hill would have hit. There are a couple of policies that we would highlight that it is not consistent with currently. Both of those, EOS 10 and T 3.2, speak to the side path along Mount Holly Huntersville Road, and we'll get to that when we get into recommendations, but that is a greenway and a bike accommodation that this particular plan is lacking. But hold that in your mind just for a second, we'll get to that as well. You can also see the red approximates about the center of mass of the proposed addition, just to the outside of that mixed-use area. And then you can see the light green. The 2040 plan would look for rural conservation, which again is the lowest designation of density that we have for single family. I just went through this. Again, we can highlight any part of this that you'd like. I'll point out rural conservation is 0.9, which is very much in keeping with our rural zoning as it is today. And then the activity center, as I mentioned, is looking for a variety of uses, but you can see there on the last line, residential uses transition to lower density with more open space away from the middle of that center. So again, you're going from the intersection of the thoroughfares. By the time you get to the top where that Dewey Puckett Road right-of-way is, you're in the middle of that 1.8, so. This is the Beatties Ford Road Corridor Small Area Plan. This is another policy document that we have. You can see where Phase 3 would hit this particular area, very similar to the 2040 plans setup. You can see down just below the image, this area is designated as residential area, and you can see in the dotted black lines that it definitely is envisioning a road network, a small local road network, but a road network nonetheless being created. Those, of course, are not indicative of where the roads must go. They're just indicating that they would be created. The last policy document I'll point to is again, the names are very similar, but the Beatties Ford Road and the Mount Holly Huntersville Road Small Area Plan. And this is the future land use map that it shows. This was also utilized in regard to the original Oak Grove Hill. What you'll see is the residential of a moderate nature actually stops at the creek. So there would be a portion of what is being proposed tonight that would be within this study, and then the remainder would be outside, and so this policy doesn't necessarily speak to that. But wanted to show you every policy document that we have that would touch some of this. Here is the density map that I wanted to show you. The Westminster neighborhood, which again is several decades old from the Mecklenburg County development regulations, sits at 1.02. There's a very large lot, single family. The existing Oak Grove Hill is at 2.6, and then the blue there, that is a special facility, congregate facility that's over 12. So again, as I mentioned earlier, the phase itself in the red border would be 1.8, and then if you take the 2.6 and the 1.8, you get a new density project-wide of 2.4 across the three phases. The transportation recommendations that are here, these are all from DOT and CDOT. I do not have a graphic that illustrates this, but what you're looking at is some accommodation of turning movements along Mount Holly Huntersville Road into the development. Most everything on Beatties Ford, Carver, and Overhill has already been captured by the previous, so there's not really much up there. Most of what DOT and CDOT is looking at is their roads. So again, happy to elaborate on any of this, or if Mr. Trott is here, if you have any specific questions. I do want to point out a very specific feature that we don't often get to see, and that is, and this does not mean that our developments don't preserve trees, but in this particular case, there is actually a documented Charlotte treasure tree. It is number 37 on their inventory. It's a white oak. It actually registers as 78 inches, but the survey that the applicant did shows it is larger than that. And if you've been out there to see this thing, it is much larger than that as well. But that is going to be the focus of their open space and a park for this particular phase. If you look, you can see that the diameter and the canopy of this almost incorporates all of that. And they have very specifically aligned the roads of the lots and created the park to preserve that tree. So that's a tremendous asset for the community, and just wanted to make sure that the board was well aware of that. There is one ordinance, well, I guess it's two parts of one ordinance modification, and that is block length. Block 16 is 958 feet, and block 19 is 994 feet, as shown in the pink. Our regulations limit blocks at 800 feet. However, as I just alluded to, specifically for block 16, there is a creek crossing, there's a gas line crossing, and there is the desire to save the heritage trees canopy area. And so for those reasons, staff is comfortable recommending block 16 has a longer than 800-foot length so that it can create that pattern that will be in the best interest of the community that is going to be created. And block 19 has some similar aspects to it. It also crosses the gas line, it also crosses the creek, but the main reason why it's not as favorable to move or sort of turn downward to Mount Holly Huntersville is because there are very specific spacing requirements from CDOT and DOT. and the intersection for Beatty's Ford Road is just off this map. And so it probably would not go very far in that direction. And so the applicant has lined this up with the other road across the street in Charlotte, as I mentioned. And so that's where CDOT and DOT are going to want to see it. So I'm not saying that your hands are specifically tied, but there's a lot of reason and rationale that we are comfortable recommending both of those modification requests. Excuse me. This is, again, just a composite showing you where those modifications are in relation to the larger entire development. This is a quick CMS report. You can see that Long Creek, Bradley, and Hopewell are the schools impacted, and Bradley is the one that would be above the tipping point in this regard with the number of units that are being added. These do not, or this report does not speak to what is already in progress with the existing Oak Grove Hill, just the new area. So the recommendations in summary are that we do find, staff does find that the project is consistent with the 3 policy documents that were referenced: 2040 plan, the Beatty's Ford, Mount Holly, Huntersville Road Small Area Plan, and the Beatty's Ford Road Corridor Plan. We do support the 2 block link modification requests. There is in our master plan for bike and pedestrian, the call for a 10-foot wide multi-use path on the north side of Mount Holly, Huntersville. That is not shown in the plan set. There's been an indication from the applicant to annex the entire 28 acres into the town of Huntersville. There are some rezoning notes from the original 2018 plan that we would need to have made a part of this plan for consistency. Also, if this rezoning is approved, all the notes and data would need to be coordinated with the following petition, 2304. So this is where they're now coming together as a 1-2 step if you're of such a mind to approve. And that would essentially take the 6.89 acres in that yellow area that I highlighted and erase it, if you will, from that previous approval. There is some BMP access that's shown that looks like it's a little bit close to some of the creek buffers, and we'd like to see that, make sure that it is not encroaching in any way. And then, as always, we always have many miscellaneous red line comments as well. I will say, and the applicant, Mr. Nate Bowman, is here to speak for himself, but I will let you know, in speaking with Mr. Bowman, that he is agreeable to all of these conditions for recommendation by staff. So having said that, do you have any questions of the presentation or of me? And Mr. Bowman is here if you have questions of him as well.
So at this point, we do have someone who has signed up to speak, and if the board is good with that, I would like to ask Mr. Daniel Gates to come up. I hope I said your name right. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, sir. If you will please state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Sure. My name's Daniel Gates, 10830 Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have that Mr. Bowman is not able to answer. I'm the engineer.
Oh. Okay. All right. Then we will open it up for questions from the board for staff. What questions do you have right now for Mr. Pete, if any? Commissioner Kidwell?
Yes, Mr. Pete, thank you for the presentation. As always, very detailed. I'm trying to understand, if the TIA was done in 2018, why didn't we do it again? Why wasn't it required?
It was reassessed by our staff, and if you'd like a detailed answer, I'll see if Stephen's here.
Stephen's coming back up.
But
Well, I'm just curious.
But we did go through our process, and
You're adding 161 more units.
51 more units.
question is,
Right?
It's 51,
Is it 51? What am I saying, 161?
because it's
Oh,
original.
yeah, okay, I misread, never mind. I misread that.
Commissioner Kovacs?
What year was the first part of Oak Grove approved?
2018.
Okay.
Let me just say, hold me to that. I know it's a 2018 application. I think the 2019 was the approval.
December?
And it went through a modification of itself by the applicant in the middle of that process.
Commissioner Munger?
And I will also add to that, I'm sorry, Mr. Munger, that once approved, the applicant actually brought it back in 2020 for an amendment as well. But it was more internal.
Commissioner Munger?
Sure. So I'm going to kind of bandwagon on what Commissioner Kidwell, I believe, almost asked. Was, I know when we originally approved this, it was, I'm going to go out on a limb and say about 117 houses. And now we're going up to 161, although we're only technically approving 51 new houses. If we looked at this as a entire one item, as 161 houses, all at once, would that have triggered a TIA?
I don't know offhand. We can take a look at it. But that sounds like it'll be close to the threshold, but it may still be under.
Yeah, so, I mean, from my perspective, I see a pattern here where I'm only going to ask for 50 houses. I'm only going to ask for 50 more. I'm only going to ask for 50 more. I'm only going to ask for 50 more. And when I get 50, 50, 50, 50, none of those trigger TIA. But when I get up to 200, if I had looked at the entire thing and said I had 200 houses, that would have triggered a TIA. Feels like we're playing games.
Yeah, I believe, and this is probably more of an ordinance question, but developments can't be subdivided or piecemealed to get around the rules. That is a current ordinance requirement, and has been.
Okay, so if the full 161, you would say for this project, it is 161. I see that mentioned several places. If the full 161 had been enough to trigger a TIA, regardless of how many were added in this particular scenario, it would have triggered it.
That's how I understand the ordinance, yes.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to know.
As long as, if it's the same development, same developer, then it's considered all one development, even if they come in multiple times to get to that point.
Perfect. I just want to make sure we didn't have a loophole here.
Commissioner Partee?
Thank you. Mr. Pete, in my hand, I have a sign-in sheet, neighborhood meeting sign-in sheet. There is no date and time stamp on it. And then in the back of the sheet, it states that notification was sent out per letter. A list is attached to these minutes. Attendance with David Pete, Principal Planner, Huntersville, Drew Bowman, and Whitney Hodges, Bowman Development Group. There were no public attendance. Then I have signatures on the sheet.
That's correct.
Can you just explain?
Why no one came out to the meeting, I cannot.
Well, who signed the sheets?
So what you're looking at is the front page is the first meeting.
Oh,
The second meeting was held because the item was continued.
okay. Well, there was no date and time.
Action.
Yeah, there was no date and time on the first sheet. That's why I was just
And-
questioning.
The applicant can certainly add that. I was there, I was party to it, so I can vouch that the second meeting was held. The first meeting had in the neighborhood of 15 folks, and most of them were from Charlotte. Not that that doesn't mean that they didn't have a standing in that notification. But the second meeting with the same list, in fact, it was a larger list, no one attended.
Was there any pushback at the first meeting regarding this development?
Questions. There were some, I think there was curiosity about how maybe St. Mark's could be better served with turning lane movements. Again, those were all kind of being handed down by CDOT. There were some questions about the value or what they were going to sell for. There was not concern necessarily, well, I don't want to speculate what they weren't concerned about, but they definitely were concerned about Mount Holly, Huntersville, and its traffic volume. They were concerned about turning movement. I think they would love to see the entry in several other places, but they also saw why it was going there as well. Beyond that, I don't recall anything strongly mentioned.
Any other questions? Commissioner Kidwell?
I do, actually not. Camden is the neighborhood in Charlotte, right across from the development. You can think of the name of?
That does sound right.
Are there any questions for the applicant?
Yes.
Commissioner Kidwell?
Mr. Bowman, how are you, sir?
Good. I might like to clear up just a few things, if that's okay, and then I'll answer your question.
Please.
The original rezoning was reasonably contentious in several neighborhood meetings. The key question was cut-through traffic. And we always contemplated correcting that as best as we could once the Hamilton family, which is who we're buying this property from, the two families we bought from, the original, the Smith Buchanans, were second generation. They've been there, families over 100 years. And I think the Hamilton family, mother, father, they've been there for about the same amount of time, 2 generations. And we knew that Hoyt's family wanted to sell eventually. So this is really a culmination of what we wanted to tell people we were going to do and provide access to Beatties Ford Road so that there wouldn't be any cut-through traffic really through Westminster. This is, Lance, the Texas model. We're building the road connections that could take you through Mount Holly all the way over to Beatties Ford through our neighborhood, but giving you more options. It's not a straight shot, but everybody that moves into the neighborhood's going to know where the connections are and how they're to be made. And this should really relieve everything that Westminster was worried about. And basically, that's why it wasn't heavily attended. I did call one of the neighborhood activists, and she wasn't on the list, to make sure she came, to make sure we think we got a better plan. And CDOT, NCDOT, and the town of Huntersville like the new connection, and the Dewey-Puckett connection also is right in, right out. So this gives us the street network that we were always looking for and a loop road. Couple other things, we are preserving the Hamilton house, which is next to the tree. Not sure Hoyt had moved out completely, but part of the home is 200 years old. So we're working on that as well. And I'll take your questions now. I had something else, but I forgot.
It'll come back to you. The park area, which I was looking over here, it's on the page 4 of 12. Will you be providing public access to get in and out of that park, the public park area?
It's going to be a public park, but the house itself will probably be part of the homeowners association.
Okay.
So they can have activities there and use it for whatever purposes they.
That was my question. Just want to make sure that the neighborhood be able to go in there.
Everybody can go see the tree, everybody can walk around.
I've got a big creek going through my neighborhood, and I think when they originally built the neighborhood, like, oh, it's green space and public access. Well, it's a watershed creek. No one goes down there, so.
No, that'll be open to the public. The house will be by the homeowners association.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Any other questions for the applicant? Commissioner Munger?
Out of curiosity, on the portion already approved, have you started construction on that yet?
No, we had a 6-month delay over a sewer easement, which I had agreed to. It was about 500 square feet, and we had agreed to a price of $10,000, which is probably 5 times what Charlotte Water would have paid. And once we were getting ready to sign it, they wanted $80,000, which is when you were talking earlier about people figuring out they can hold you up. And thank goodness Mr. Puckett, who's over here, who's been in the area as long as anybody as well. That's why that 94 years. We decided to pay Mr. Puckett to go through his property. So we had no problem paying Mr. Puckett and instead of somebody who's trying to extort money from us. And then that was a 6-month holdup. And just like anything else, we've been strung for curb out there since Thanksgiving, and it's a muddy mess. So we've been having some construction issues due to the weather.
All right. If memory serves, it's been 37 months since this was approved.
Right.
So 2.5 years, just kind of haven't had the right set of circumstances.
Right.
I'm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's sat there for probably 6 to 8 months over the sewer easement.
And I guess that the only reason I bring this up is it's, again, I look at patterns of behavior. And if I look at this project, and it was approved 37 months ago, 3 years and 1 month ago, and it hasn't started, and I look at some other projects similar with the Vermilion Village, nothing's happening.
Oh, that's because water ran out of sewer.
I hear lots of
So, I
excuses.
mean,
I'm just
you know,
curious
there's a lot of
why
gatekeepers
nothing
in our
ever
business.
seems to move.
Sewer easements, not giving any warning to having no more sewer in the total east basin
Sure.
of Huntersville was very dramatic and hurtful for my business, and still isn't resolved. They won't have it to April of 2024, and we're still trying to get them to allow us to begin construction and put our pipe in the ground with conditional capacity. And that's going to DEQ right now with Charlotte Water, and we're hoping to get that by March, so we can start 3 projects in April. But we don't have that resolved with Charlotte Water yet.
I'm also curious, are you pursuing any of the other properties in the area, if I'm permitted to ask? And I guess you're not required to answer, but I'm curious.
What area?
In this area, are you looking to add on
No,
chunks?
no. This is the only property we contemplated so we could make the road access work.
All right, I'll leave it at that.
Any other questions for the applicant? Absolutely, Mr. Gant. Actually, let's take a moment for the planning board to introduce themselves. If you wouldn't mind standing up and introducing, and then by all means, ask your questions.
Frank Gammon, Planning Board.
I'll introduce myself once, Madam Mayor, Commissioners, thank you. It's more of a request than a question, based on Mr. Munger's previous question regarding the TIA. I have a request that the Planning Department, and Steve, Mr. Trott, provide that answer regarding the TIA on this project to the Planning Board, either in the staff report or by whatever means he deems necessary. Thank you, ma'am.
Very good.
And I just wanted to add, that's what I was going to add. Even without the TIA, we're doing 100-foot storage left turn lanes and right turn lanes on Huntersville, Mount Holly, Overhill and Carver are both going to be widened from 16 to 20 feet. We're adding curb and gutter, sidewalk on both sides, some on-street parking. So we're making road improvements to Overhill, Carver, and to Mount Holly Huntersville Road. So I would assume that if the TIA was done, those are probably what we would have been required to do. But since we had to satisfy CDOT, NCDOT, and the town, we went ahead and agreed to all that.
Commissioner Kovacs.
It's actually for staff. It's similar to what Vice Chair Gammon requested. I wanted to know if we could get the numbers, because you stated the CMS information that we have in here does not include Phase 1 because that hasn't been built yet. So could we get that information?
I have it for the old from the 2018 and the 2020, which I can provide.
Yes.
Are you asking for those or for them to do kind of a whole?
Well, I know we're not going to get it back from CMS, so I can do simple math if we can.
Sure.
I can get that from you and then kind of
Absolutely.
see what the impact is in totality.
And Stephen has the answer to the TIA question.
Okay, wonderful.
It's a lot of numbers to keep up with, so I had to look it up to refresh my memory. The overall development was looked at for the latest TIA determination. It was over. Now, taking a step back, the town's thresholds have changed since the original development went through. So now, based on the new rules, it still was over the TIA threshold. However, when we went through the scoping process to figure out which intersections had to be studied, none of them were above that threshold. So therefore, no TIA was completed. That makes sense, because those thresholds were also changed as part of the amendment process. So the first box, yes. Get the second box to figure out what you're going to study. Nothing came out of that for them to study. So therefore, a new TIA was not required.
Okay, Commissioner Boone.
Madam Mayor, Mr. Trott, maybe this is a good time to answer this question, but once we start the roundabout at 5 Points, the Pembroke Road and Overhill. Overhill, you will not be able to go into the 5 Points area. Is that not correct? It'll be stubbed?
So the Beatties Ford and McCoy intersection project that we're currently working on, we're working on a traditional intersection at that location, not a roundabout. So just want to clarify that. We're still finalizing the right-of-way plans, but the plans that we have so far do not include a connection to Overhill.
Okay, so that's going to be stubbed at Pembroke, or do you know that specifics yet?
We're still working through those because Pembroke is currently a state-maintained road, so we've got to work through that with them. But we're looking to make it a four-legged intersection instead of a five-legged intersection.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions on item 9A? All right. Seeing none, we will close that public hearing. And we will now move to item 9B, which is to conduct a public hearing on petition R23-04. And this is the Oak Grove Hill revision. Mr. Pete.
This will be much simpler and more streamlined than the last presentation, but please keep all of that information in mind. You can see the area in yellow. You can see the red bordered box at the bottom of the image, 6.89 acres. This is very simply in this action to be removed, and this is only to occur, the recommendation, if the previous request were to be approved. So they dovetail together, taking the 6 acres and sliding it into the new. The use, the layout, you've already seen that. I'm just going to go through this, just highlights exactly where it's coming out of. Again, I've described the changes ad nauseum, so I'll just go to the recommendation. Again, very simple. Because you are dealing with an area that was already previously approved by referencing the 3 policy documents, we're still doing that because the remaining portions are still, and removing 9 lots does not change any of that. Again, the recommendation here is to only take this action if the previous action were to be approved next month. And then we would make sure that all the notes are updated to reflect that in terms of open space percentages and unit counts and such.
All right, Commissioner Kovacs.
This might not matter, but just due to our last meeting, is the removal of that from the Phase 1 approved plan considered a substantial change?
It is. That is why this is before you.
Okay, so you have to go.
Anytime we look at an alteration to an external boundary, we declare that major.
Any other questions? Commissioner Boone? Nope. All right. All right, then we will close that public. Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you. I'm not going to forget you, Mr. Sailors, I promise. Come on up. Mr. Sailors did sign up to speak this evening. As you come, will you please state your name and address for the record? You have 3 minutes.
Yes, ma'am. Joe Sailors, I live at 9332 Westminster Drive, which is going to be a little bit of dismay in the sense that we were just told that you, the town, are talking about doing away with the 5-point intersection at Overhill, McCoy, Beatties Ford, and the Water Road. If you do that, you're going to make people that live in the original, if I touch this, does it work that way? Oops, sorry about that. Give me back. The pointer. Which is the pointer?
Your finger. Oh, just touch what you want.
If you do away with the Overhill connection to Beatties Ford Road, people that live here now are going to go down Pembroke to Westminster Park and out, where we fought the first time around because it was all one phase, that they would not dump traffic through the Westminster subdivision. If the town is now going to do away with Overhill being able to get out to McCoy, it's going to end up dumping people into Westminster Park. Yes, he's going to have 2 entrances to Mount Holly Huntersville Road, but that's in Phase 3. Originally, we only had 1 phase. And if we have 1 phase, then the connection that was supposed to be done to Mount Holly Huntersville Road would have been completed. But now there will be no completions of any roads into Mount Holly Huntersville Road until the completion of Phase 3, which means the 160 units or 130 units, however many he gets done before he makes the intersection to Mount Holly Huntersville Road connected, we're going to have all that traffic backed and dumped into us, whether we like it or not. Because right now, we're having cut-through traffic because of the stoplight at Beatty's Ford Road and Mount Holly Huntersville Road. It backs up from that intersection toward Huntersville all the way to W.T. Harris, where it dead ends into Mount Holly Huntersville Road. It backs up from Beatty's Ford Road and Mount Holly Huntersville Road all the way to Hopewell Presbyterian Church right now, in the mornings and in the afternoons. So you're going to add another 160 cars times 3, because the families are going to have more than 1 car, and we're going to be ended up being stuck with too much traffic.
Thank you, Mr. Sailors. Are there any other questions for the, for staff or the applicant? All right, seeing none, we will close this public hearing. Thank you. We'll now move to item 9C. This is we will be conducting a public hearing on petition TA 22-16, and this is a request by the Huntersville Planning Department to amend zoning ordinance Articles 3.2, general districts, and 9 conditions for certain uses to establish buffer standards for a multifamily home use in one building on one lot. And Mr. Semino, it is so good to see you this evening.
Good to see you, Mayor and board members. Enter the staff report into the record. For the brevity of time, I'm going to keep my remarks kind of short, but I have plenty of slides if there are specific questions that I will be happy to answer. So currently, in the neighborhood residential, neighborhood commercial, town center, and highway commercial district, we allow 1 apartment building on 1 lot, and it's a use permitted by right. However, the setbacks don't differentiate. So if I build a 4-unit apartment building or a 200-unit apartment building, the setbacks are the same, even if I join a single family. So what we're proposing to do is to amend the ordinance and increase setbacks based on what the adjoining uses are. And the greater the density, the bigger the setback. So how we are doing that, we are, this slide on the left-hand side gives you an example of the neighborhood residential district. And you'll notice in the column A, we have a strike-through under multifamily homes uses permitted by right. And then if you go to just below that, then we have uses permitted with conditions. We put multifamily homes, and the conditions are found in 9.64, okay? And so we're doing that to every one of these districts that are here on the right-hand side, the neighborhood residential, neighborhood center, town center, and highway commercial. 9.64 is the section where we're establishing a range of setbacks. Starts at 5 feet, goes to 10 feet, moves up to 20 feet when you're adjoining attached and detached duplex house, and then goes up to 30 feet if you are 15 units an acre plus to 20 units an acre and you're adjoining one of those detached duplex or attached house. And then it goes up to a maximum of 40 feet if you have over 20 units an acre and you're adjoining that. B talks about how many trees and shrubs you have in that space, which is consistent with what the ordinance provides to today. And basically, if you are a apartment development inside of a major subdivision, you're going to be subject to the subdivision standards, the multi-building standards. So that's what point 2 is about. So I That's kind of the text amendment in a nutshell. I have plenty of slides to go over details for you. The staff does recommend this amendment be approved. The Ordinance Advisory Board did recommend approval 6-1 on January the 5th of 2023. It will go to the Planning Board next week and then ultimately to the Town Board for decision. But having said that, again, I'm happy to answer any questions the boards might have.
All right. So we'll open it up for questions. Planning Board members, any questions? All right. I think that you all have been doing a lot of work. I think a more tailored buffer makes a lot of sense for the adjoining property lines. So thank you for all this work. We will go ahead and close that public hearing. And we will move to item 10A. And item 10A is to consider a decision on petition TA 22-13. This is a request by the Huntersville Planning Department for a text amendment to the zoning ordinance to amend Article 3.31A, Manufactured Home Overlay District, to update skirting requirements to comply with the General Statute Chapter 160D-910, as well as to amend the Article 11.6.1A, zoning compliance to clarify application requirements, and to amend Article 9.9, commercial communication tower, to comply with General Statute Chapter 160D-937 for wireless facilities on town utility poles. How are you?
Good.
It's good to see you, Miss.
It's great to
It's good to see you, Miss Malentz. What do you have for us this evening?
Yes, so I'm going to be presenting TA 22-13, and I would like to enter my staff report into the record. So it addresses 3 separate items: compliance with 160D-910 by removing the masonry skirting requirement for manufactured homes located on land leased to the owner of the manufactured home. Amendment to Article 11.6.1A, zoning compliance, to state that property owners must sign the application. And number 3, compliance with Chapter 160D-937 on the conditions and fees for co-locating wireless facilities on town utility poles. The statute language on the manufactured home skirting and the tower co-location has been in effect since 2021, so the text amendment is just a formality. 160D-910G states masonry skirting shall not be required if the manufactured home is located on land leased to the owner of the manufactured home. However, staff's proposed language will still require non-masonry skirting in such cases to protect items such as aesthetics and for practical reasons like protection of pipes, home temperature regulation, animal intrusion, etc. I'm going to go back over the 3 scenarios that I created with you all because I know it can be kind of hard to wrap your head around. So number 1, Joe owns the land and Joe owns and resides in the manufactured home. Masonry skirting. Joe owns the land and Joe owns the manufactured home, but leases the manufactured home and land to Tim. Masonry skirting required. Joe owns the land, but leases the land to Tim, owner of the manufactured home. Non-masonry skirting required. Section 2, staff is just updating the zoning compliance article to specify or to codify that applications must be signed by the property owner. Section 3 is just updating the commercial communication tower standards to specify that the towers shall comply with 160D, 937, and 938. Those 937, 938 deal with public utility poles and the right to co-locate on the poles and fees, terms, and conditions. Planning staff recommends approval of the text amendment. The Huntersville Ordinances Advisory Board recommended approval of the text amendment. The public hearing was held January 3rd with no public comment received. The Planning Board recommended approval of the text amendment. town board decision is tonight. Please let me know if you have any questions.
All right. So we'll start. Is there a motion on this topic? Thank you. Commissioner Boone?
In considering the proposed amendment TA 22-13, the town board recommends approval based on the amendment being consistent with policies Land Use 10, LU 10.1, and LU 11.1 of the Huntersville 2040 Community Plan, as the amendment is necessary to comply with the state legislature. It is reasonable and in the public interest to amend the zoning ordinance because it is necessary to coordinate the Huntersville zoning ordinance to comply with the state legislature.
Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner Partee. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Kidwell?
Thank you. A lot wrapped into one here. I'm going to ask some questions on the manufactured home skirting. Who's going to enforce this?
So our code enforcement would, but really it's going to come up with new manufactured homes being placed. So they have to pull a building permit when a new manufactured or mobile home is going to be placed. We review all building permits for zoning. So when they were to pull that permit, that is when we are going to start asking, do you own the trailer? Who owns the trailer? Are you leasing the land? That kind of stuff. And at that point, we would determine what kind of skirting they would need. And then at the end of that, once it's placed and everything, they have a zoning inspection that will be done. So that is one thing that we would look for at that time as well.
So to clarify, we're only looking at new units? We're not going to send someone out to look at existing units?
Correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Munger?
Just to kind of elaborate on, I believe it was covered in Commissioner Boone's motion, but because this is part of 160D, this is us complying with the state law, and if we say no, it applies anyway.
Correct, yes, except for section 2, but section 3 and 1 would still apply regardless.
All right, thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And those opposed? 5-1.
That's what I was thinking about.
We'll now move to item 10B.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mullins. Item 10B is consider a decision on petition TA 22-12. This is a request by the Huntersville Town Board to amend Article 4 and 12 of the zoning ordinance, clarifying first-floor residential and commercial area requirements for shopfront and workplace mixed-use buildings and an associated definition amendment. Mr. Semino.
Thank you, Mayor. Enter the staff report into the record. TA 2212 was a request by the town board to clarify for mixed-use buildings the mixture of residential and non-residential as the ordinance is written today, and through this process we've changed the word non-residential to commercial use. So the ordinance calls for change, and what you see in red is the proposed language, and it is the commercial use or up to 50% of residential use on the first floor area. So that's going to be changed for the shopfront building and the workplace building. Also, the section of the ordinance is going to say specifically your first floor commercial area shall include floor area used exclusively for commercial uses and shall not include any floor area contained or shared with residential uses such as storage, mechanical rooms, etc. Any floor area devoted partially or wholly to serving residential uses shall be considered residential floor area. So again, this is to clarify how we allocate commercial versus residential. The ordinance is also making amendment to the definition section of commercial use and establishing a non-residential use provision. And this is to make sure that everything syncs up in the ordinance. And the one thing I want to point out is the difference between the planning board and planning staff recommendation in the Huntersville Ordinances Advisory Board recommendation. So what you see on the top is the language that had been recommended by the planning board and agreed with the staff. Again, that's the commercial use up to 50% of the residential. Commercial uses are up to 50% residential use on the first floor area. However, the Ordinances Advisory Board, when they made their recommendation was up to 40% residential. So they wanted less residential, a little bit more commercial. So that's the difference between the two, and I'm happy to answer any questions the board has at this point in time.
All right, we'll open this up for a motion first, and then Commissioner Kovacs.
In considering the proposed amendment TA 22-12, the town board recommends approval with the following change. Commercial use or use up to 40% residential use from the first floor area. The recommendation is based on the amendment being consistent with Huntersville 2040 Plan policies LU-6, LU-7, LU-10, EV-1, EV-2, DT-1, DT-10. It's reasonable and in the public interest to amend the zoning ordinance because the amendment clarifies commercial use and residential first floor area requirements, further stating commercial use first and requiring a minimum of 60% commercial space to be allocated to commercial use, emphasizing commercial usage of first floor area in mixed-use buildings.
Is there a second?
Second.
Now we'll open it up for discussion. Commissioner Kovacs.
I just wanted to say I appreciate all of the work that staff has put into this with the recent situation that we did have. I was thankful that you guys went to work really quickly and worked on this, and the HOAB really hashed it out and did a great job, and our planning board as well. So I'm really thankful everybody was able to work together quickly to put this in place to save future problems.
Anything else from this board? Commissioner Boone.
Yes, Mr. Semino, since the percentages have changed here, in Article 3.2.7, there's a footnote, and this footnote's number 2, that, and I'll read this, the mixed-use building duplicates the shop front building types as at least 2 occupant stories. At least 50% of the habitable area of the building shall be in residential use, the remainder in commercial use. Will that change at all?
No, that will not change. And that section of the ordinance is talking about the total square footage of all stories of the building. Whereas this text amendment is that first floor, which is right on the street.
Just asking. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, there is a motion and there is a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. And we will now move to item 10C. Give me a moment to get situated here. This is a hearing, or this hearing rather, is a quasi-judicial hearing on the application submitted for petition as Special Use Permit 22-02, which is a request by the Hitesh Patel on behalf of Hotel Ventures of Lake Norman, Inc., for a special use permit for a hotel at 16221 North Cross Drive. Quasi-judicial hearings are evidentiary in nature. Only parties with standing, including the applicant, property owner, local government, and individuals who can show they will suffer special damages, have the right to participate fully in the hearing. Special damages must be particularized, separate, and distinct from damages to the public at large. Special damages are a fact-specific inquiry. While proximity may bear weight in the determination of special damages, proximity in and of itself is insufficient to grant standing. Parties may present evidence, call witnesses, and make legal arguments. Other individuals may, but are not required to be, allowed to speak as a witness. However, they will not be allowed to participate fully as a party, such as by questioning other witnesses or by calling other persons to testify. Witnesses must swear or affirm their testimony. General witness testimony is limited to facts, not personal preferences or opinions. Certain topics require expert witnesses, including projections about impacts on property values and traffic impacts. Individuals providing expert opinion testimony must be qualified as experts and provide the factual evidence upon which they base their expert opinion. Mere conclusionary testimony, lacking the foundation of the expert's opinion, is insufficient to establish the existence or non-existence of a fact or conclusion. The board must base quasi-judicial decisions upon competent, material, and substantial evidence in the record. Competent evidence is evidence that is sufficiently trustworthy and reliable, and that is legally fit and acceptable for consideration by the board. Speculative, irrelevant, or vague evidence, non-expert opinions as to something that requires an expert, and non-accepted hearsay evidence will likely not be competent evidence. Material evidence is evidence that shows that the standards will or will not be met. Evidence is substantial if it is relevant and regarded by a reasonable person as sufficient to support a specific conclusion. Speculation, unsubstantiated fears of the community, or vague assertions do not constitute substantial evidence. Quasi-judicial hearings are constrained by standards in the ordinance and the facts presented. Even though the board may hear other evidence, it is not obligated or if it is not objected to, the board should rely on competent material and substantial evidence in making its decision. Now, the board will recognize the applicant as a party, as well as the other property owners if different from the applicant. Are there other persons who believe they have standing to participate fully as a party? If so, please come forward at this time. Seeing none. If you do not wish to participate as a party, please wait to come up until after we've identified parties with standing. But it looks like the only parties here today with standing are the applicant. Is the landowner here by chance? So the applicant? Okay, thank you. Then we will move forward. Well, each party with standing, please come up and we need to swear you in. And at the same time, we'll do that with staff as well. Over here, please. Yes, please. Anyone who plans on speaking this evening. Okay. All right, folks. If you will please place your left hand on the Bible, your right hand up. Yeah, yes. If we can do it in 2 batches if necessary. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you shall give to the board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Would you mind passing that down? Thank you. All right. And for those of you who are here, we have not done a quasi-judicial hearing or had a quasi-judicial hearing since last July, so please bear with me. All right, the parties to this case are entitled to an impartial board. A board member may not participate in this hearing if she or he has a fixed opinion about the matter, a financial interest in the outcome of the matter, or a close relationship with an affected person. Does any board member have any conflicts of interest to offer at tonight's meeting? Commissioner Phillips.
I would like to disclose that in my interim job, I am working with the hospitality industry and I'm on the board of Visit Lake Norman. So if the board would prefer, I can recuse myself.
I don't think that that would be necessary, Ms. Loop. I mean, you are representing the town on Visit Lake Norman, so I think we are good there. The parties to this case have rights for any ex officio communication to be disclosed. Ex parte communication is any communication about the case outside of the hearing. That may be email communication as well as conversations with parties, staff, or the general public. Does any board member have any ex parte communications to disclose? Commissioner Kovacs.
I had a 2-second one-sided conversation with Commissioner Kidwell before realizing it was quasi-judicial since it wasn't shared with us that it was.
Thank you. Commissioner Phillips.
I've had general conversations. We've received emails in the past, and we had the public comments during the public hearing. So I just wanted to put that on record for all, but nothing that has been done has swayed me one way or another.
Commissioner Munger.
I did not realize this was quasi judicial either, and I have had members with at least, or conversations with at least 2 people on this board, but it does not affect how I feel in general about it.
Commissioner.
Yeah, I talked to a ton of people on this board. We've, in-depth conversations, hours long. Just kidding.
Yeah, this is
Does not
public
bug me.
record.
Yeah, I know.
Anything else? All right. Based on the disclosures we've heard from the board concerning partiality and ex parte communications, does any member of the board or any party to this matter have an objection to a board member's participation in this hearing? So I will first look to this board, and now I will look to the parties. You have any objections? Please disclose if you've had conversations.
I'll go ahead and start. I went over some of the questions that I had tonight for the applicant, and just kind of broad general questions about specifically some of the numbers related to the medians, the various scenarios that were presented.
Commissioner Kidwell?
Yeah, I was, conversation with Commissioner Kovacs and I just on where I fell on this, and pretty much said undecided.
Okay.
Ditto. I said, we went down the list, how we feel about items. I said this, I'm not sure.
Okay. All right, so. Mhm. That's correct. Thank you. I apologize. Give me 1 second. There we go. Now I'd like to call on planning staff for the presentation of their staff report. How are you, sir?
Doing well, thank you.
It's good to see you.
Thanks for the thorough explanation. Takes care of one of my slides. So I'm Jesse James. I'm going over SUP 2202. Please enter the staff report into record. So as we've already discussed, all the items that go within a special use permit, quasi-judicial hearing, burden of producing competent material and substantial evidence lies with, on the applicant. There's a simple majority vote for approval. So why is a SUP needed in this particular case for North Cross Hotel? So included in this, the second part of this SUP is a conditional district rezoning. And part of the analysis into that was section 3.2.9, which goes into the corporate business district, which is the zoning that the applicant is looking to go for the approval of a hotel, specifies that any hotel that borders a single-family residential zone or use, and that's property line to property line. Don't confuse it with structure to property line. Property line to property line requires a special use permit. The conditions for that section are Article 9.4.5, which is the hotel and motel use under the corporate business district. As we already spoke about, one of the triggers that hits this for a special use permit is property line to property line. You'll see a site plan next that shows that site plan with the single-family residential use to the rear. The other part that does trigger an SUP is the height for a hotel or motel cannot exceed the district for which they are going for. The corporate business district does allow some uses within other building types to go over 45 feet, but this particular building type has a height max of 45 feet. The applicant is asking for 47 feet. So the site plan on the screen shows what I was speaking about before. The back property line is directly adjacent to those single-family homes to the rear, and the proposed hotel, which is 47 feet, goes over the building lot type 45 feet. Special use permit, or the Article 9.4.5 does allow an increase in height with the condition of a special use permit. So the current slide shows the situation at that area. You see the site plan with the wooded evergreen trees and some of the deciduous trees in the back, the single-family residential neighborhood behind that, and it is surrounded by commercial uses on either side with I-77 across. So just wanted to show an elevation of the proposed hotel. We'll see more of this in the conditional district rezoning hearing, but so this height, as I talked about before, which is a workplace building type, is 47 feet proposed. The maximum height is 45 feet. An important note, CB does allow up to 48 feet or 4 stories with other building types. And a hotel use, the best building type and lot type that work within that district is the workplace building type. So part of any special use permit is section 11.4.10E2. That goes into the applicant burden section. Part of staff's analysis is to go through the criteria and list any staff findings within this burden. The overall, the applicant has the burden to prove that these are all met, but I'll go over the staff's finding. Number one, the proposed special use permit will not materially endanger the public health or safety. From our analysis and going into permitting and reviewing any site plan is, we would go into any public health or safety that might be impacted. That includes fire and building safety codes that would be done by Mecklenburg County, and these would not be, this would not endanger public health or safety. We wouldn't allow that through the permitting process. The proposed special use, number two, the proposed special use will not substantially injure the value of abutting property or it constitutes a public necessity. The applicant did have an impact analysis on neighboring property values completed by Hotel and Club Appraisal and Consulting Services. Their analysis found that the property values of abutting properties will not be negatively affected. The applicant does have a presentation on that. The proposed special use, number three, the proposed special use will be in harmony with the area in which it is located and in general conformity with the comprehensive plan and applicable small area plan. Staff's review of this, the proposal is consistent with the Huntersville 2040 community plans, LU 516271 and EV 1.3. Furthermore, hotels are a use by right in the corporate business district currently, and this proposal complies with all the applicable ordinances with the exception of one minor modification of the 2 feet of height, which also triggers the special use permit. And a reminder, it does require the conditional district rezoning, which will be followed by this presentation. Number four, the proposed special use will comply with all of the lot size, yard, and other standards which the ordinance applies to all uses permitted in the zoning district in which the property is located. Through our analysis and review of the plans, the proposal does comply with all the applicable standards with exception to the one minor modification. And 5, the proposed special use will comply with all general and specific standards required by the appropriate section of the ordinance for issuance of a special use permit. And this is simply put, all the standards will be met through the review process. As far as staff recommendations, staff does find that the special use permit application meets all the requirements for a proposed hotel based on the above findings of fact. Staff recommends approval if the board finds that the applicant has presented competent material and substantial evidence that proves the criteria for a special use permit. So I am available for questions. The applicant is also here for a presentation if there are no questions of me.
So we'll kind of follow through this line here. Does the applicant, would you like to speak or testify, or do you want to call your first witness? How would you like to proceed? You need to come to the microphone so that everyone can hear.
Mayor Bells, I have a presentation, quick, but I do have some notebooks to hand out to the board members with information that we're presenting, including affidavits from 2 expert witnesses who are here today.
And they are also testifying what's in the notebook?
Yes, they've been sworn in and they can answer any questions.
Then we will allow that. Thank you. While she's pulling, bringing those binders up, does anyone have any questions currently for Mr. James? Commissioner Munger?
I always have questions. Hopefully mine's relatively easy. Whoops. All right. So one of the reasons, one of the things with the hotel is that it has to be 250 feet away from the nearest property, and we know this one abuts a neighborhood property. But that's property line to property line. One of the things I saw in there is that the actual structure of the hotel will be 339 feet away from the neighboring property line, which would imply, and I know some of this might be, you might have to draw some conclusions, but to me that would indicate that the actual property to property distance is probably about 400 feet. Does that seem like a fair assessment?
Well, the conditions for this particular use in that district call for the measurement to be property line to property line.
Understood.
So I can't make that conclusion. The fact is the structure of the hotel is that distance you had said from the actual single-family property line.
Okay.
There is a buffer as well that I'll go into in more detail with the conditional district rezoning, but that goes over the required buffer for that district of 80 feet. That buffer is 124 feet proposed. And then you've got the parking lot between those two that add an additional distance.
Okay. I'll probably leave that one alone then.
Does anyone else have any other questions at this time for Mr. James? All right. As you come, if you will also, as you begin, please state your name and address for the record as well as the relation that you have to this case.
Good evening. My name is Suzanne Todd. I'm a land use attorney. My address is 1065 East Moorhead Street, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28204. Before I begin, is there anyone in opposition to this?
No one else has signed up.
Okay. Thank you. That helps. All right. And we're here today, I'm here today on behalf of Hotel Ventures of Lake Norman, the applicant. With me are two generations of the Patel family, Hitesh Patel and his brother Rakesh and father, Mr. Patel as well. And again, we're asking for a special use permit to allow hotel use in this area, as well as following, we'll be asking for a rezoning from corporate business to corporate business. As you know, this is our burden, and so I'm going to go through this information as quickly as I can. And we may not use all exhibits, but I did want to share with you, just kind of run through the exhibits that are in this notebook. The first one is, of course, is a copy of our site plan overlaid onto an aerial, because I thought that was more effective than the basic site plan. We also have the Article 9.45. This is something that you've already seen, that shows what we need to show if we need a special use permit. And of course, we need a special use permit for the distance as well as for the height. With a special use permit, a hotel can actually go up to 6 stories, and stories is not defined. We have to be a minimum of 141 feet from the property line with the edge of the structure, and we're actually 339 feet. We also have to be, access has to be along or front on a major or minor thoroughfare, and you can see that North Cross Drive is in fact a minor thoroughfare. So we comply with, and there's also a requirement in the hotel use conditions that we comply with applicable standards and ordinance. And the staff's findings validate that we do comply with the applicable standards and ordinances with that minor request for additional 2 feet of height. So we've met the, exhibits 1 through 5 address those hotel-specific conditions. And if you look at exhibits 1 through 5 in the index, the staff report, the minor thoroughfare exhibit, as well as separation requirements, and the site plan and the Article 9.45, you can see that we've complied with those aspects. The next thing we have to comply with are the SUP standards, which are also in your ordinance, which are set forth and which Mr. James also addressed. So we're going to run through those as quickly as well. The next item in our application, or sorry, in the notebook is in fact Exhibit 6, and I'm just reading these into the record. That's our application burden form. We also have an affidavit of Zachary Spurgeon, who is with Hotel and Club. He's an MAI appraiser. You'll be hearing from him, as well as a copy of his impact study. We have an affidavit of Mr. Jay Henson, who is also with us today. He's going to testify that the site plan meets general specific ordinance requirements. And also, he's got a great cross-section that's attached to his affidavit as well. And the last affidavit is not an expert, but it's from, in the sense of what we need to show, but is by Mr. Hitesh Patel. And he has a North Cross Masters Association plan approval letter is attached to that. And then the last item, number 10, is actually proposed findings of fact, should you care to consider any of those, sort of a buffet, if you will. Okay, the first witness I'm going to call is Mr. Spurgeon to talk about his impact study and to address that the proposed special use will not substantially injure the value of budding property. He'll also be able to address proposed special use will not materially endanger public health or safety. You've also heard that in the staff analysis, that there's no reason to believe that this Building will not be constructed in compliance with all ordinance and building code requirements, as well as address the special use to be in harmony with the area in which it's located in general conformity. So Mr. Spurgeon could come up.
Mr. Spurgeon, as you come, if you'll please state your name and address for the record, and again, your relation to this case. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Zach Spurgeon. My address is 3717 West Market Street, Greensboro, North Carolina. I am a partner with Hotel and Club Associates out of Greensboro. I've been with the firm since 2006 and have more than 16 years of experience on real estate consulting and appraisal. I'm here today as a consultant. I hold a Bachelor of Science degree from NC State University and a certificate in hotel real estate investments and asset management from Cornell. Our firm was retained by the applicant to evaluate 3 items relative to the hotel. Whether it will be materially endanger the public health or safety, whether it will be in harmony with the area and conform to the comprehensive plan, and whether it will have any adverse impact on neighboring property values. I prepared the report in front of you, which I will refer to in my testimony. In developing opinions on these matters, I visited the proposed hotel site and surrounding neighborhood, reviewed site plans and building plans for the hotel, aerial maps of the neighborhood, and reviewed the Huntersville long-term 2040 community plan. In analyzing any potential impacts to property values, I completed a match pairs analysis. Regarding whether the hotel will materially endanger the public health or safety. The hotel will be a good quality modern hotel. Will meet all applicable fire and building safety codes. Primary ingress and egress will be on North Cross Drive, a minor commercial thoroughfare. It will be a franchised hotel which will require the owner to maintain high levels of maintenance along with fire and life safety standards. For these reasons, it's my opinion that the hotel will not materially endanger the public health or safety. Regarding whether the hotel will be in harmony with the area and conform to the comprehensive plan. The hotel is within the employment center character area. As previously noted, it's adjoined to the north and south by commercial uses and to the west by single-family residential neighborhood. There's a 124-foot wooded buffer which will separate the residential neighborhood from the hotel improvements. The comprehensive plan encourages more intense development where transportation and utilities already exist, LU 5.1, which is the case with the hotel project. In the employment center, there are expanded options for frontages, including buildings fronting the street, LU 7.1, which is also the case with the hotel. The hotel project will create job growth, support small business and entrepreneurship, and expand the local tax base, contributing to the economic vitality of Huntersville, EV 2.1. As previously noted, hotels are used by right within a zoning district, EV 1.3. For these reasons, it's my opinion that the hotel will be in harmony with the area and conform to the comprehensive plan. Whether the hotel will have any adverse impact on neighboring property values. There are 3 residential lots in Burkdale that adjoin the hotel site. These lots will be buffered by a 124-foot wooded area. The hotel improvement will be constructed, as noted earlier, on the far eastern portion of the site, with the closest residential lot being 339 feet from the hotel building. The hotel will also have kind of a unique step-down design that's 3 stories on the western side closest to the residential lots and 4 stories in the middle. I performed a match pairs analysis to analyze the potential impacts the hotel project might have on property values. 3 paired sales analyses were completed on residential neighborhoods that adjoin a hotel property. First, I looked at recent sales data for homes that adjoin the existing hotels. Next, I looked at recent sales data for homes in the same neighborhood that are not adjacent to that existing hotel. After adjusting for certain factors, I compared the two sets of data to determine whether there was any adverse impact on property values due to the proximity to a hotel. The closest residential neighborhood that I analyzed is in Huntersville, near exit 23. The hotel is the Best Western Plus on Statesville Road, and the neighborhood is immediately east. I completed a similar assignment in Durham and have included two residential neighborhoods in Durham that are adjacent to an existing hotel. In all three analyses, the average adjusted sale prices per square foot for properties adjoining hotels did not indicate any adverse impact on property values when compared to the same metric for properties in the same neighborhoods not adjacent to the hotel. In other words, market data shows no adverse impacts on property values as a result of proximity to a hotel. Therefore, it is my professional opinion that the proposed hotel will not have any adverse impact on neighboring property values. If you have any questions for me, I'll be happy to answer.
All right, so does the board have questions for this witness? Commissioner Munger?
Is there a particular reason you use median instead of mean when you were comparing the values?
I just thought the median would be a good reflection of the...
The reason I ask that is if I take five numbers, 2, 4, 6, 10,000, and 20,000, the median is 6. The mean is 5,002. It tends to disguise something that may be happening underlying with the data. I did have some questions about some of the particular scenarios you put forth.
Sure.
On the first one, the Best Western Hotel, the question I had was specifically about number 5, 406 Mount Holly, Huntersville Road. On that one, it has an in-ground pool. It's the furthest away property. It's on a minor thoroughfare and has a much higher acreage. All of these would suggest a much higher value, and as you know, this one actually skews downward as it's adjusted square foot is $40 below average. So for me, this looked like more of an outlier than a comparable.
Sure.
If I remove that, the adjusted non-hotel comps go to 212.07, and again, these are averages. And the hotel neighboring property, 201.97 per square foot, meaning the difference in mean is negative 5% compared to 0.9%. Would you disagree with that?
Could you repeat the last couple sentences? I'm sorry, I was having...
The numbers?
Following all the numbers, yeah.
Yeah, so the adjusted non-hotel comps goes to 212.07, and the hotel neighboring property stays constant, 201.97. And the difference is mean is negative 5% compared to a negative 0.9%.
Yeah.
Is that?
I mean, that sounds accurate. I mean, I'd have to do the calculations.
Okay. Yeah. Next one I'm going to look at is scenario 2, Trinity Park Residence Inn. The house in question I'm looking at is the 1009 Watt Street. This one is nearly 50% larger lot, has the most square foot. Year built range of all other houses is 1906 to 1925, whereas this house was built in 2009. Again, this looks like more of an outlier to me.
Correct, yeah.
So if I take that one out, the adjusted non-hotel comps are 366.01 per square foot. The hotel neighboring property stays constant, 409.69. And the difference in mean is a plus 10.7% compared to a plus 0.2%. Just throwing out numbers, but, and the last one, the Durham La Quinta, this one actually makes sense to me. The only thing I want to point out is the hotel neighboring property is the only one that did not sell for above asking price, spent 45 days on the market, and when none of the others even hit double-digit days on market. And again, difference in mean is plus 6.9%, whereas the median difference is a plus 5.6%. And that's kind of a point of emphasis. Anytime I see a median, it makes me jump. I'm a data person. Overall, the interesting thing is, in 2 out of the 3 scenarios, property values actually increased for the hotel neighboring property, which is just kind of an interesting thing. In general, if you can explain why the outliers were chosen, and was there any way a directive given to you to get that number as close to zero?
Was a directive given to me?
Yes.
Absolutely not, no.
Okay.
No, I acted very independently the whole time, no. In regards to the Residence Inn in Durham, that sale, if I recall, just because I understand the other ones are older properties and historic. This one is 13 years old, roughly. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it wouldn't be a comparable sale. I understand it's got newer finishes, but it is in the same neighborhood. Size-wise, it's right in line with the other ones in terms of all, some of the other features. I'd have to go back and look at the MLS data sheet and talk to the listing broker again about it. But on the surface, just because of the age, I wouldn't necessarily discount it totally as a comparable, but. And then on that last neighborhood, the La Quinta one, I can't remember which cell you were referring to on the.
I was referring to the hotel adjacent being on the market for 45 days and it was the only one that was at listed price. Everything else was over listed price.
Yeah. I mean, the days on market were a little higher for that one. I acknowledge that. And so potentially that implies that, you may have a more limited buyer pool in that case. But did it impact the value that you actually got for your house? Doesn't appear to be the case from that. And interestingly, in the second analysis on the Residence Inn, the cell, the number one, which actually borders the hotel, had a days on market of 5 days, and there's actually no buffer. There's a brick fence that's maybe 8 feet tall that separates the hotel from this house, and they had some vegetation, but it was snapped up pretty quick.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kovacs.
Just out of curiosity, were these numbers, was there anything in the formula that took into account the fact that was, some of these times were at the highest point of our market in our zip code?
I believe all of the sales were within the same general time period, right? Is that? Let me pull this up. This is for the one in Huntersville, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, all of the sales were adjusted for the date of sale, and because they were all kind of in the general same time frame, I don't see any impact from that.
Okay.
Any other questions for this witness? Or any additional questions? All right, seeing none. Ms. Todd, do you wish to call any other witnesses to speak on behalf of the case?
I had a quick question for Mr. Student. Did the comments made by the commissioner, did that change?
You do need to speak into the mic so that folks can hear.
Did any of the comments and the mean versus median, did that change your opinion?
No, it did not.
In this case? Okay. And you mentioned the buffers between the properties. Can you explain what buffer was between the Best Western and the adjacent property?
Sure, yeah, the Best Western here in Huntersville has a wooded buffer so it's in my report, but I believe it's roughly 85 feet of a wooded buffer versus the applicant's buffer of 124 feet.
All right, I have no further questions. And I would just call Mr. Henson.
Sure. Mr. Henson, as you come, if you'll please state for the record your name, address, in relation to the case.
Yes, Jay Henson, 121 Gilead Road. We were contracted to do the site development plans. We did the site plan, the site engineering. So we did prepare the plans. We did a grading plan that showed sort of a cross-section of how the site works. We provided underground stormwater detention to sort of increase a little bit of that buffer in the rear so that, you know, we were able to save more of the existing trees. In addition, we added committed to some landscape material, larger evergreens on top of the wall, in addition to the buffer, to sort of, you know, protect with headlights and some additional visual screening. We've coordinated and contacted NCDOT with driveways, and, you know, have worked with staff regarding any other site plan items such as parking, layout, setbacks, et cetera. So I'm glad to answer any specific questions y'all had.
Are there any questions for this witness? Seeing none.
Thank you.
Ms. Todd, do you have any additional witnesses?
We do have an affidavit from Mr. Patel that concerns there were questions raised during the public hearing with regards to maybe the difference in types of hotel use, extended stay versus, you know, the different products. I don't know if that's 100% appropriate for here, but if there is a concern about that, then I would rather address that in here as a health and safety issue. If there's a concern about the hotel products, let me put it that way.
Are there any questions from this board regarding hotel product?
And he does address that in his affidavit.
Seeing none.
Put the clicker on the floor. So.
Thank you.
Again, the rest of these basically screens here are the rest of the presentation really has to do with efforts made by the client with regards to massing, as you heard previously, the, you know, setting in the fourth story so that it does not, so that it gives a perception of being more of a third-story building with the fourth story kind of in the center, so it's set off from the road and from the properties behind. Again, in an effort to make this harmonious with the surrounding area. You can see, I like this cross-section because I really think it shows you the buffer, the 124-foot buffer that's between the residents, as well as the proposed retaining wall, and then we will have on top of that retaining wall a row of evergreens. And then, of course, you do have the parking lot trees, and then the 339 feet before you even get to the structure itself. So I do think that's valuable to see. Again, you can see how this property lines up with the existing properties, parking lots, and the rear of the property. And attached to Mr. Patel's affidavit is a letter from the North Cross Master Association. This property was originally part of that as North Cross Master Plan, where he receives approval for the plan. They've approved the plan as well as the architectural specifications. And Mr. Spurgeon did mention, as well as staff, it's always difficult to weigh in on whether something complies with the land use plan when you have the experts and the staff sitting there telling you it does, and we would agree with staff's assessment of that as well, that this does comply. It's in the employment center, the property located in the employment center, and it does comply with the land use plan. And we just stand by, and we're available for any questions you might have.
Are there any other questions for the applicant?
I'd like to do a little bit of housekeeping, if I may, and tender both witnesses as experts in their field, land valuation, as well as architectural site plan design, and tender the notebook exhibits 1 through 10 into the record.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So does the board have any more questions for the parties or witnesses before we move into deliberation? Hearing no additional questions or presentation of relevant facts, the board will now begin deliberation. The evidentiary hearing remains open so that the board may ask clarifying questions if needed. As a reminder, this board is tasked with deciding if, based on competent, material, and substantial evidence presented at the hearing before this board, this proposal meets the applicable standards. If the applicant meets their burden of producing competent material and substantial evidence that the standards in the ordinance will be met, the burden shifts to the other parties opposing the application to show by competent material and substantial evidence that the standards in the ordinance will not be met. If conflicting evidence is to be as standard is presented, the board will weigh through that evidence. And we did not have anyone a party opposing the application. If the applicant does not meet their burden of producing competent material and substantial evidence that the standards in the ordinance will be met, the board must deny the application. The application is, as originally submitted, was considered by the planning board, and the planning board made a recommendation. Nothing that occurred at the planning board level, including the planning board's recommendation, is considered evidence that you can base your decision on. However, the planning board's recommendation may be useful to the board in identifying issues that this board may want to consider and evaluate based upon the evidence that was presented at the hearing before this board. Now, we're going to take a moment. Is there any deliberation that needs to be had? Any additional questions for the applicant or the witnesses? Seeing none, is there a motion regarding this request?
Madam Mayor.
I'm
sorry.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Boone. Commissioner Partee has a question.
I have a question, Ms. Sloop, and I may be out of order. In my career in law enforcement, when a defendant or a person of state presents evidence, normally under discovery, we receive the evidence prior to the hearing, so we have a chance to evaluate and come up with questions that may be appropriate at the time of the trial or at the time of the hearing. And tonight, I'm just getting a booklet without having to properly examine the content, and then you want myself to make a decision on this case. So therefore, are we out of order, or is this appropriate, or is this a pattern when it comes to quasi-judicial?
So first, just a point of clarification, quasi-judicial is not the same as a formal evidentiary hearing. At the quasi-judicial hearing, you're only able to base your decision on information that is provided at the quasi-judicial evidentiary hearing. And seeing as how the witnesses were here to testify as to what they put in the affidavit, it's appropriate because they are testifying as to that same information included in the notebook. The counsel had indicated that she is preserving the record by presenting the notebook into the record.
Thank you. Asked and answered. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Boone, I believe you had a motion.
I do, thank you, Madam Mayor. And considering the special use permit, SUP 22-2, Norcross Hotel, we, the town board, finds the request meets all required criteria for granting a special use permit for a hotel space less than 250 feet from a residential zone, as outlined in the zoning ordinance Article 9.45. The town board grants SUP 22-02 and incorporates staff's finding of facts for the standard to grant SUP 22-02.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Phillips. Now, is there any discussion? Seeing none, there is a motion. There is a second. All those in favor? And those opposed? Motion carries. The staff will draft, and I will sign the final written decision to reflect the vote and reasoning for this decision. I'd like to thank you to everyone for attending the hearing regarding petition SUP 22-02, a request by Hitesh Patel on behalf of Hotel Ventures of Lake Norman, Inc. for a special use permit for a hotel at 16221 North Cross Drive. We welcome you to stay for the other items on the agenda, and if you are leaving, please do so quietly at this time.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
A point of housekeeping. Ms. Sloop, what would you like us to do with these?
You can keep them and read them again if you'd like, or you can give them to the clerk.
Okay.
All right, we will now move to item 10D. Mr. James, you are still here with us. Thank you for staying. Consider the final action on petition R22-06. This is the request by Hitesh Patel on behalf of Hotel Ventures of Lake Norman. We'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. And please enter the staff report into record. So a lot of this was previously gone over with the SUP. I'll go over some of these items quick, and at the end, if you would like to go back to some more detailed items, please let me know. This zoning request, as you can see on the screen, is for a rezoning for a conditional district rezone from CB CD to CBCD. The main difference between the two is the site plan within the original CB does not allow hotels as a land use. So that's the reason for triggering this this actual rezone. We saw this site before, but one thing to note is the deciduous trees in the back is a good time for this picture to be taken. That is in the wintertime, so it does kind of emphasize the buffering in the back in the winter. We'll go into more detail on the requested or proposed evergreen trees to be put on the back parking lot to emphasize that the foliage leaving the deciduous trees. Kind of an important part of this rezoning, it was actually brought up in the public hearing, so I added this slide before. As you can see on the screen, the growth in 1997 shows the commercial district for the CBCD original was actually graded in 97, where the residential subdivision to the rear was not yet established. In 2002, you can see part of that commercial district being built, and then the single-family residences to the back were added around 2002, with some of that site actually being graded later for the condition or the commercial district. So the current zone, as I alluded to before, is still corporate business conditional district. The main item there is the hotels were excluded from uses to be allowed in that district. That was in 1994, or actually before that, and was amended in 1994 to convert to conditional business instead of business part conditional district. Important part of that is corporate business now does allow hotel uses with conditions. So this actual rezoning request, as you can see, is a hotel, 109 rooms, 109 parking spaces, 4 stories, 47 feet. 45 is permitted, but we've already gone over the special use permit that allows that. Building separation from the residential zoning line. A condition is 3 times the height of the hotel, which that equals 141. They're proposing 339. That gives an additional buffer that they did not have to do. Special use permit is required. That's already been gone over. They meet the specimen tree save number of 30% and actually are giving 10% higher than that. As you can see in the rear, there's an 80-foot vegetated buffer provided. Actually, it's a 124-foot buffer provided, 80 is required, with the additional row of evergreen trees. Actually, this site plan does not show that, but it's along the back of that retaining wall against the parking lot. There's actually a proposed connection to the La Unica restaurant, which is a requirement in the ordinance, excuse me. And they are asking for the 2-foot modification, which is part of a conditional district rezoning. That is the minor modification request. This is just a close-up shot that does show the evergreen trees in the back and the buffering at a closer angle to the single-family residences to the rear. And you see the property lines do touch there in the back. So part of the neighborhood meeting, some of the residents were concerned with windows on the back of the hotel, worked with the applicants to take those windows off the back to provide more security on the back. Also in the ordinance, we require buildings that do not meet the massing, meaning the adjacent properties, which are 1 and 2 stories, to then make that massing perceived to be smaller. So they did that on the top. They took actually part of the back and the front and the sides and reduced those down, as well as adding architectural features for different exterior building requirements. So they have concrete and then brick and then another material on the top. One item that was not present at the hearings, just another detail, just important detail as far as transportation goes, is NCDOT STIP project number I-5715 will add a on-ramp from I-77 northbound to connect to 21 and North Cross Drive. They still have to do the right-of-way acquisitions, but that will, note, add more traffic on North Cross and possibly add more commercial uses that have not been added before, and just have more visibility for commercial uses as well, and by also relieving some of the congestion on 73. Digging into the 2040 plan, the proposed site is within the Employment Center. The Employment Center asked for a mix of retail, residential, live and work units. Important part of the aspect is when you have employment or employers, you need a place for them to stay temporarily. So the Employment Center does ask for hotel uses within it. So with that being said, the Planning Board does consider approval of R2206. It does meet the Community Plan 5.1, 6.2, 7.1, and EV 1.3, the same land use plan items that were approved under the special use permit. The proposed development is consistent with the surrounding development's character by varying the massing of the building, and further adds additional buffering that is not required under the ordinance. It is reasonable and in public interest to approve the rezoning plan because the rezoning is consistent with the envisioned use and development pattern set forth in the 2040 community plan. The Planning Board had that same approval statement, and that was approved 8-0 with one recusal. And I'm available for any questions if you have any, and the applicant is here for presentation as well.
All right, is there a motion on the floor?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion, please.
Yes, sir.
In considering the proposed application R22-06 North Cross Hotel, the town board recommends approval based on the plan being consistent with the Huntersville 2040 community policies, LU 5.1, LU 6.2, LU 7.1, and EV 1.3. The proposed development is consistent with the surrounding development's character by varying the massing of the buildings to reduce the perceived scale and volume, and further provides additional buffering than required by code with the adjacent single-family residential zoning to the west. It is reasonable in the public interest to approve the rezoning plan because rezoning is consistent with the envisioned use and development patterns set forth in the 2040 community plan.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Second. Commissioner Partee, any discussion? Commissioner Kidwell?
Yes. Mr. James, I don't know if you can pull back on the presentation that we,
For the SUP?
yeah. Just on the one that they gave us. I don't know if you have that or not up there.
I do not have that. Most of that is in the staff report, so I'm not able to answer.
The question I have is where the parking lot extends back. To the left and right of the proposed area, you know, it extends further than the other two parking lots. My question is, on the photo, though, it looks like there's either a retention pond or a natural, there, take a look. Let's see. Here? Yeah. Is that?
Those are, so the difference between those sites and this site provides, it's kind of, you can see it in the box area, in the parking area, that's underground retention. The others offered,
That was my.
so, and that actually helps provide more parking, but then it allows for additional buffering in the back.
So that was one question. The other one is for the applicant. In terms of heating and air conditioning units, where will those be located? And with the, will those be able to be seen from the road or?
Okay, so first of all, Hitesh Patel, 3836 Honors Way, Augusta, Georgia. No, all of the equipment would be screened. So we would have some rooftop equipment, 2, I believe, and they will be screened as well from street level and adjacent areas. And then any that we have on ground level would be screened with landscaping or little wooden fences and so forth.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Munger?
I'm not sure if this is for the applicant or staff. You mentioned a connection to La Unica. Has La Unica agreed to the connection, and is the space available, meaning are there parking spaces they're going to lose because of that connection?
So that, La Unica was required to have that stub. So that stub actually goes to the property line. So this would actually just join that stub. So the parking spaces they have now, I think they just use for overage parking or convenient parking in the front, but they're not meant for parking spaces.
So it's not technically a parking space, it's just a stub, and they're connecting stub to stub.
They're convenient parking spaces now, but they're never meant for parking spaces.
All right, thanks.
Any additional questions? Seeing none, there is a motion and there is a second. All those in favor? And those opposed? Seeing none, that motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr. James, and thank you very much, Mr. Patel. We will now move to item 10E, and this is the Huntersville Ordinance Advisory Board's appointments. We will be considering appointments to the Huntersville Ordinance Advisory Board. It looks like Mr. Semino. Sorry about that.
So
We're making 3 appointments this evening, correct?
Correct. In your agenda packet, you had the staff memo, if you will. There are 3 appointments that are available. There were 6 applicants. You also will see in that memo, we tried a number of different ways to get interest in there, including notifying the Huntersville 101 and also emailing in 2 cases to just the general email planning blast, as you will. And so we have 6 applicants for 3 positions. And
All right.
happy to answer any other questions.
All right, so each commissioner will give me 3 names.
Full names or last names?
Are there any similar? Okay, we're getting punchy up here. Last names are sufficient. And we're going to start with Commissioner Munger.
I'm going with full names, sorry. David Johnson, Jacob Palillo, Daryl Wood.
Johnson, Palillo, and did you say Webb?
Wood. Wood.
Commissioner Partee, I need 3 names, please, for your Ordinance Advisory Board appointments.
I have Scott Harrington, Jake Palillo, Michael Pollard.
Michael Pollard? Thank you. Commissioner Kidwell?
David Johnson, Edward Montague, and Michael Pollard.
Commissioner Kovacs?
David Johnson, Jacob Palillo, Michael Pollard.
Commissioner Boone? And Commissioner Phillips?
Harrington, Palillo, Pollard.
Yes, Commissioner Kidwell?
Didn't you just, isn't Mr. Palillo on your housing authority? And
Mr. Palillo was appointed to the Affordable Housing Task Force.
Does that interfere with, so I know nobody can be on a committee, 2 different committees. Does that interfere? Are we good?
Ms. Loop?
In the resolution that the town board previously passed in 2018, they did include a waiver language that would allow the town board to appoint someone to an additional appointed board if the board essentially deemed fit.
Does that answer your question?
I guess, sure.
Okay. So based off of my numbers, and I would like the clerk to confirm, I have Mr. Palillo and Mr. Pollard appointed to the Ordinance Advisory Board. Okay. Now, there was a 3-way tie, or a tie, 2-way tie, excuse me, 2-way tie, between Mr. Johnson and Mr. Harrington. So, board members, I'm going to ask one more time, and we're going to stick with those 2 names. And this time, we're going to start with Commissioner Phillips. Harrington. Commissioner Kovacs. Johnson. Commissioner Kidwell.
Johnson.
Commissioner Partee. And Commissioner Munger.
My apologies to Mr. Johnson, but I'm going to make this easy. Let's go Harrington.
Thank you. Mr. Harrington has now been appointed to the Ordinance Advisory Board, and I believe he currently is serving on the Parks and Rec, which means he will have to, he has, my understanding, just to be clear for everyone, is that he is aware of that and has. Great, all right. So I do want to say we had a wonderful group of individuals who were willing to serve. I think that this board had a very difficult decision to make with these appointments, but congratulations to Mr. Harrington, Palillo, and Pollard. We will now move on to item. Oh, yes, we do have to do that, don't we? Is there a motion to appoint these 3 individuals? Commissioner Boone?
I'd like to appoint the following individuals to the Huntersville Ordinance Advisory Board: Mr. Harrington, Mr. Palillo, and Mr. Pollard.
There's a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? None opposed. We'll now move to item 10F. Ms. Maloney, how are you this evening? Thank you for sticking around so late.
Thanks for having me.
This is the CIP funding as local match for federal raise grant application.
Yes. As you'll recall, I came here a month ago seeking funding to hire Alta Planning and Design to apply for a raise grant to fund a project along Church Street and Delwood Drive. This is the map of the project that shows in orange the Church Street extension between Delwood Drive and Holbrooks. And what we're proposing for the raise grant is to also fund a multi-use path that will then extend further along Church Street between Delwood up to Huntersville Concord Road, a sidewalk along Delwood Drive, and then a multi-use path along Holbrooks Road. The raise grant, as the previous slide shows, requires a 20% match. And what we discussed a month ago was using the CIP funding for the Church Street extension as a 20% match to leverage the other segments of the project outlined here. You received some preliminary funding estimates in an earlier round of the agenda package. Those funds have been adjusted based on some feedback from Alta, our consultant, and included some increased costs around environmental permitting, as well as some adjustments to the contingencies and some escalation factors to account for increased construction costs. So the new figures are here before you for a grand total project cost of $12.5 million. And then we've adjusted what we're asking you guys to approve in the CIP funding from $2.4 million to $2.5 million to meet that 20% match that you see down in the bottom right-hand corner. So the resolution that you have in your agenda package is calling for the board to affirm the Church Street, Holbrooks Road, and Delwood Drive multi-use paths and sidewalk project as the submittal for the raise grant funding, the amount and percentage for local dollars matching per Exhibit A at $2.5 million in local funds, and authorizing the town manager to take any actions to affect that, and the resolution would be passed on today's date to meet the deadline for the grant application of February 28th.
Commissioner Kovacs.
The last page, sorry, I'm talking about in our packet. So Exhibit B, the letter, it says that we formally document our commitment of $2,430,000, which is 24%, which is different than what you have on
Yes, so that should have been updated, but I apparently was not.
No.
Okay.
Oh, okay, okay, you're right.
Okay.
ADHD, I'm in the moment.
Yeah, you had already been sent out the packet by the time we got our.
You're right, I'm wrong.
Okay, good. I hope we can find that then. Yeah, so we've.
Give me just one quick second. I'm just writing this down since it's different in my packet. And did you have a question, Commissioner?
I was going to make a motion, but please,
Commissioner
no, Commissioner Partee, please, I'll second your motion.
Commissioner Partee?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to approve the $2,430,000 in capital improvement project fund that are already committed to the Church Street Extension Project from Holbrook Road to Delwood Drive as our local match for the RISE Grant Project.
Commissioner Partee, would you consider amending your motion to the new number, which is on the screen here, to your right at the bottom, 2.5?
Oh, top right, $2,541,225.
Yes, that is the new number.
New number, gotcha.
Second.
And there is a second. Thank you, Commissioner Boone. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. We want to thank you, Ms. Maloney.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Last item on our agenda this evening is item 10G. You are not Patty McGinnis. You are the Jackie Huffman. Thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you. Our Finance Director, Patty McGinnis, prepared a request for proposal seeking accounting firms interested in providing audit services to us. The Local Government Commission, a division of the State Treasurer's Office, prepares a list of firms that perform audit work. Patty contacted 5 firms asking them for an email address to send an invitation to bid to. One of them responded within 3 days and said, thank you, we're doing all the audit work that we're interested in. 3 more firms did not quote. We received 1 quote from 1 firm, and that's the request you have in your packet for a proposal to award the audit contract to Martin Starnes. Full disclosure, Martin Starnes has done the audit here since about 2006. Happy to respond to any questions you have.
Is there a motion on the floor?
I have a slide I'd like for you to see.
Okay.
In case you have some consternation, Jackie, why do folks not want to do our audit? So I would direct your attention to, from a finance conference, this slide from the State Treasurer's Office, that 3rd bullet point, in my professional judgment, auditing related to ARPA standards has become complex, and firms are less interested in doing that audit work. Please note that the Treasurer's Office says there are 9 firms who said they've gotten out of the business.
Is there a motion? Commissioner Kovacs.
Motion to approve contract with Martin Stearns or audit contract with Martin Stearns.
Is there a second?
Second.
Kidwell, I think. Any additional discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Huffman. We will now move on to Mayor and Commissioner reports. Commissioner Munger, do you have any reports this evening?
Put a mic in front of me and I'm always going to speak. The Department of Environmental Quality will be holding a public hearing on Colonial Pipeline's wastewater treatment plant permit application on March 16th at 6 p.m. at CPCC Orancas Campus, 11920 Verhoff Drive, Huntersville. On March 3rd, 2023 at 3:30 p.m. at Town Hall, the Huntersville Ordinance Advisory Board will be holding their next meeting, which will be the first meeting for our newly appointed members. And last but not least, as always, if you have the opportunity to give, please consider supporting our local nonprofits.
Thank you, Commissioner Partee.
Thank you, Mayor. I have no reports this evening, but I always want to, I will always advocate for gun safety, especially in the homes where guns are stored and children are present. Accidental and intentional discharge causes serious injury and death. The Huntersville Police Department has free gun safety locks. Organizations, individuals can contact the police department or me at dparthuntersville.org. Let's be child safe. And as always, I want to advocate for our nonprofits, specifically Cool Kids Clubhouse. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kidwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. CRTPO met on the 15th. It was a very good meeting. We were discussing discretionary funds. CATS, who received a large sum of ARPA funds, was submitted to receive nearly $8 million. We have postponed that to see if we can further use that money on other projects for other municipalities within the region. We also voted to instruct NCDOT to look at the I-77 Managed Lane Project. That passed with the weighted vote. And then also, it was announced that I'm on the committee, the subcommittee or task force for the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding, and we'll be going through that process over the next few months to present to the board for changes in the way we do things at CRTPO, and that's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Kovacs.
The Lake Norman Chamber upcoming events. Tomorrow is a busy day. 7:30 to 8:30 is Networking Works, Huntersville Connections Weekly Networking Meeting. It's early, but it's definitely worth getting on the call. Tuesday, February 21st, 11:45 to 1 is the Diversity Lunch and Learn celebrating Black History Month, sponsored by Jay Morgan with Comstasis. Lunch for the first 30 registered, Zoom's available. In-person is full, but you can contact the chamber for a Zoom link. Also tomorrow, from 5:30 to 7, is Business After Hours event, hosted by Simonini Homes. It'll feature D9 Brewing Beverages, Simonini Homes, Mays Hall Community in Davidson, so you can RSVP with the Lake Norman Chamber as well. Wednesday on the 22nd from 9 to 10:30 is the Lake Norman Regional Nonprofit Roundtable Meeting. Join Lake Norman regional nonprofits as they gather for quarterly regional meeting hosted by Angels and Sparrows Resource Center, located at the Rama Executive Park. And Thursday, February 23rd from 6 to 8, Lake Norman Young Professionals Social. So please come out and join them for a group of off-the-clock socials. This month, the social is being held at The Cabin in Davidson. And I would also like to invite you out to the Pottstown Community Meeting, Thursday, February 23rd, 5:30 at the Delwood Center.
Commissioner Boone?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The committee to look into our full-time firefighters will be holding our first meeting with the town staff later this month.
Thank you so much for that. And Commissioner Phillips? No update. So bear with me for just a moment. I do have a few things I need to share with each of you. The MTC, our next meeting is March the 22nd. Last month, we got an update around microtransit. Microtransit Phase 2 is up here. It will be targeting Huntersville, Cornelius, and Davidson. They are currently looking at a service strategy of on-demand service with an expansion. And then the service hours will also be reinvested back into the fixed route. Their next steps, CATS will be coordinating with town staff. They will set up some public outreach. They are also doing a service and fare equity analysis, advertise procurement and implementation of the microtransit is late 2023, early 2024. So I wanted to share that with you. The EDC, exciting news, as I shared with each of you via email last week, we want to welcome SEG, SEG Systems. They are a leading in-house manufacturer that designs, engineers, and builds integrated merchandising displays, light boxes, frames, and graphic solutions. They announced their relocation to Huntersville. This relocation and expansion is a $30 million investment, creating 150 new jobs, in addition to 86 jobs moving from Charlotte, so a total of 236. I will tell you that one of the really cool things about SEG is that the president of SEG is a Huntersville native. So he's very excited to be able to move back to his hometown and bring his business back here. Looking forward to working with them in the future. And then he says that over the next 5 years, we hope to add the 150 high-quality jobs to the Huntersville community, and that the location's perfect for their existing community base as well. So wanted to share that with you. Also, the Affordable Housing Task Force will have its very first meeting on February the 28th, and Mayor Pro Tem Phillips and I are looking forward to that. We've been working diligently with Mr. Williams to set that original agenda up, and looking forward to just kind of letting this group do its thing in regards to affordable housing, because these truly are professionals that we're pulling together. Would be remiss if I didn't say, for those who are still watching with us and those still here in the room, the Mayor's Fitness Challenge for 2023. Please sign up. I challenge each of our commissioners to join in. It's March the 12th through April the 22nd. You can sign up at huntersville.org for the 2023 Mayor's Fitness Challenge. And please, let's bring that trophy home to Huntersville. Mayors Washam and Knox should not have that nice trophy. It needs to sit right here. And then, last but not least, yesterday was the nine-year anniversary where Peter Jordan was tragically murdered in the landings at North Cross Apartments. And I bring this up because it has not been solved yet. And all eyes, if there's someone out there that knows, has any information that can share, please reach out to North Met Crime Stoppers. The Crime Stoppers have got a billboard. Commissioner Boone, do you know if that's going up yet, or if it?
Mayor's going up this month, but it's only going to be up for about 7 or 8 days.
Okay.
Very short period of time.
All right, so we have a billboard going up, and then there is a reward for up to $14,000 for information that leads to an arrest. This family, the Jordan family, deserves some closure. And if there's anyone out there that does have information that they can share, this entire community would be greatly appreciative of it. I just do not want to forget, right? It has been 9 years. He was 19. So I would also encourage you to keep their family in your thoughts and in your prayers as well as they continue down this road. And our police department, who is looking to find the culprits who caused this crime and took a life too soon. With that, is there a motion to adjourn? Any closing comments?
Wanted to mention the Huntersville's birthday party this weekend.
Yes, that's right.
So please join us at the Huntersville Recreation Center, 2 to 4 p.m. and celebrate Huntersville's birthday.
I think there's cake and balloons.
And cupcakes and commissioner faces.
And commissioner faces, that's right. Thank you for
Commissioner
that.
Munger.
Commissioner Munger.
Maybe.
I had forgotten. I appreciate that because we certainly want all of our residents to come out on Saturday, February 25th. Any other closing comments? Is there a motion? Motion to adjourn. And is there a second? All those in favor? Good night, Huntersville.